Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's In Search of Tomorrow watch party for Aliens Special Edition. I'm Andrew, and I'm joined by the fantastic, the guru, the authority, Ian Nathan, Mr. Aliens, Mr. Ridley Scott, Mr. Film Buff. Hello, sir.
Thank you very much. Very nice introduction. I'm going to pause on the logo there, so I'm ready to go at the right time.
Wonderful, wonderful.
But she's not pausing. Anyway, you go.
Fighting with technology.
I'm fighting with technology in my end, but we'll be fine.
That's okay. So everyone, as Ian's just getting ready for the sync point as well, so sync point will be as the 20th Century Fox logo sort of fades in. So while everyone's getting sorted with that, Ian, a question I ask my guests on all of these is, when was the first time you saw this movie? Can you tell me about it?
This is a good question. I saw this on release in 1986, and I grew up in a small town called High Wycombe, which is a very dull town. Yes. But we had a lovely new multiplex. Well, it wasn't a multiplex at that point, but it was a lovely new cinema. And I went along with my dad to see it. And because I was hugely into science fiction and like everybody. But I got to an age where I could go and see an Aliens film. I had to see Alien on VHS, like everyone else. I was too young to see it at the cinema. And I have clear memories of how brilliant it was. And we'll talk all about that when we get going on the film. But also, what I most remember, first time I saw it was the point where Paul Reiser as Burke shuts the door as they're trying to flee the kind of center of it and get out. And as they shut the door, some guy well behind me in the cinema, and it's fairly full, stood up. Well, I can imagine him standing up. He may not have stood up, but I remember this guy just went, "You bastard," at the top of his voice. And I thought, I didn't. Later, I thought, God, he was so gripped by this film. He was so in it that he couldn't stop himself from expressing how much kind of anger at that moment. And I didn't really take that because I thought that is actually how good the film is.
Exactly. It shows what absolute brilliance it is. I mean, I think I'm going to say this film is a masterpiece. I don't think there's many films you can describe that are. The Alien is often described as a perfect life form. This is a perfect movie as far as I'm concerned, because it crosses genres. It's horror, it's sci-fi, it's adventure, it's a bit of fantasy. There's even a bit of a love story, kind of the motherly love story we see between Ripley and Newt in the film. It's just got everything in it. The dialogue is razor sharp throughout the film. It's just brilliant, and you don't have to have seen the prequel, well, Alien, to really be able to even watch this film. I think with being my age, my introduction to this was, I saw this on the legendary first time it was shown on ITV, I think in the early 90s.
Right.
And it did the rounds at school for me, and everyone was like, "Did you see Aliens on Saturday night?" And it was like that. And then I saw Alien after I saw Aliens. I think there's quite a few of us, but we've got so many of the amazing community joining us here. No, Mad Matt, the one genre it possibly doesn't cover is it is not a musical.
Well, I don't know. There are elements of musical in every action film. Every action film is about pause and event and pause and event. And you can argue the use of music and the way he entwines it with the action is very much like a musical. But obviously it's not a musical. Nobody sings. No. But, all good action directors understand the concept of musicals very well. Yeah. They kind of play with them. So, I'm going to argue it's a Christmas film as well. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to argue that because we're watching.
You're not the only one. Some of our amazing community members. We've got members joining us on YouTube, on Discord, and on Facebook tonight. Wow. Joining us. We've got Marley McLeay saying Burke was a bastard. Well,
he was a bastard. No doubt about it.
Tim Ortiz on YouTube saying, so this is a Christmas movie. We've got just people here. So someone called Par Mimic on YouTube says, "Hello, Ian, from an Empire X workie in 2006.
Okay, well, good to hear from you. It's a long time ago now. We had quite a few workies over the years, so forgive me if I can't quite bring you to mind immediately, but feel free to jar my memory. If we were horrible to you, I apologize now. I can't remember. We tried to be nice, but we were busy people.
Well, everybody, let's go for starting the movie on the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Press play, and we're seeing the 20th Century Fox logo, which I'm sure if this film's re-released, we'll see a castle there and a boat and fairies flying around.
That music kicks in already, doesn't it?
It does. Wonderful score from...
Oh, it's a brilliant score. In terms of how it echoes the original score as well. There's a really clever sort of synergy between the way the music works in both films. But it's kind of it's sort of pre-Hans Zimmer throb. Yeah, everyone credited Hans Zimmer with coming up with all that. But if you listen to this score, it's doing that thing where you're not sure if it's music or if it's a sound effect or it's kind of just something weird creeping in the cinema. And
it is. I mean, the score in Alien was Jerry Goldsmith, if I'm not mistaken. And this was then James Horner for Aliens. So, I mean, the pedigree of the composers for these films is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And James Newton had a real tough time on it as well. It's like everything in this film had no time at all. And he had to do it in like 3 weeks or something. It was like a ridiculously hard job. And he swore he'd never work with Cameron again afterwards. But Titanic happened.
Well, and so did Brad Fiedel for the Terminator films. He had a very similar relationship to James Cameron.
Yeah, but he's a hard taskmaster when he's in the film. I think when he's in the zone of making a film, it's tough with Cameron. And he's only his well, I suppose, second and a half film. You really count Piranha 2. This is kind of really his second film. But already he was that kind of laser focused on this film that he just wouldn't take any crap from anyone.
No.
And it's the Cameron way or the highway. And, you know, for many, that was just too hard.
There were infamous stories about working with British crews and not enjoying tea breaks, etc.
Tea breaks, the poor tea lady and the dented tea urn. And I think it was more about, there was an attitude in British crews that they knew better. And he's just, and he kept trying to show them the Terminator, which hadn't been released when they were shooting Aliens, certainly not in the UK. And he kept trying to put on screenings and none of the crew would show up. So they just thought he was some punk. They thought they knew better than him. And he just they won't even come and see my film. They won't even get it. There was a first AD who was probably the ringleader, who was really giving him a hard time. Yeah. And he did what Cameron always does. He terminated his contract and he was gone. But I think a lot of the guys had worked with Ridley Scott and they'd sort of loved Ridley Scott, and they thought this guy isn't Ridley. But
no, but it's just fantastic just seeing all this. I think something I want to get out of the way now is before we get into the meat of the film. Is the impact of this movie on, well, other movies, but equally video games. Especially the community was speaking to me about this, about the Halo franchise. Is so much of it is lifted from Aliens, the way the Marines interact, even the ships are, the Pelican ship in Halo is basically a carbon copy of the dropship from Aliens. So much of everything, the shape of the ships looking almost like rifles in space. Again, the same everything. And then you can see even James Cameron has borrowed from himself, because the look of the universe of Avatar, which is his new gem that he's obsessed with, all the military in that is lifted basically from Aliens.
Well, of course, it really comes from Vietnam. And obviously, I suppose most people know that he wrote a sequel. He wrote a version of Rambo 2 that he called The Mission. And he was writing Alien sequel at the same time. This was a gap between while they were trying to get the Terminator up and running, and Arnie was trapped making Conan the Destroyer. So he took a job. He took 2 jobs. He took the Alien sequel job, which was an incredible story in itself, and he took the Rambo job. And he was writing Terminator, he was updating the script, and he was writing the Alien screenplay, and he was writing the Rambo screenplay all together in a really short space of time. And like the same day, in the evenings he would write one, and during the day he would write another. And he was drinking loads of coffee and going quite mad doing it, because that's how he worked. And he said that they bled into each other. And he was reading Michael Hur's Dispatches, which is the great book about Vietnam, great war reporting on Vietnam, very influential on Apocalypse Now. And a lot of the way the Marines speak and the kind of the attitude they have with each other and their attitude towards the aliens comes from Michael Hare and Dispatches. And it's just a commentary on the way the soldiers in Vietnam spoke in the jungle. So a lot of that, this is a Nam film in many ways. And Cameron would say that,
It really is. I think as well, it's quite interesting as well, the way that the Marines and the military in this are portrayed. And it's very similar in a way to the way that Star Trek was reinvented with Star Trek 2, whereby they did away with the lycra jumpsuits and the foil capes and the silliness of the first sort of Star Trek, and they went into a very much military grounded, very gritty, more realistic type situation. And that's always been the way this universe has been, especially with Aliens, with this film. They are, yes, they're Marines with more advanced weapons, but they could be, like you say, Marines from, or army from
the
Vietnam, from whatever. The way they interact, there's no laser hoverboards or anything silly like that in this.
Interesting that the Marines weren't Cameron's idea. They came from Gale Anne Hurd. People know the origins is that Cameron had this screenplay Terminator going around Hollywood, and everyone really liked it, but it was having a tough time getting it made. But he got him a meeting with Gale Anne Hurd, and they had this kind of gladiator in space scripts. The idea they kind of wanted to work with. And that's what he was brought in to talk about. He did his pitch and said, I want 8-foot robots and guys in armored suits and power loader type things. A lot of things we see in his subsequent films. And they didn't really like that. They wanted more of a fantasy, Conan-y kind of thing. And the meeting was winding down with the usual kind of Hollywood. Yeah, give us a call. We'll meet up. And Cameron just said to them both, what else are you working on? And they said, well, we've got an Aliens sequel. We're trying to get together with this thing. And he'd not clocked that they had produced Alien, which was such an influential film for him. One of those light bulb films. The whole look of it, the whole way Ridley Scott approached science fiction, he said was hugely influential on him. And he sort of stopped in his tracks and tried to play it cool and went, well, what have you got? And he said, literally, they've got like a half a page of text, which was like, Ripley and Marines go back to LV-40. They didn't call it LV-46, go back to the planet, then some bullshit happens. And that's all, this kind of paragraphs, and it said, and then some bullshit happens. And of course, very famously, Cameron said, well, I'll find out what the bullshit is. And he went away, and that's how it had all started. And then, obviously, developed the idea, and they had many squabbles, and they didn't think he was going to direct it. And he said, I am going to direct it, or I'm out. And all those kind of things came into it. But it began with Gale Anne Hurd, and then, of course, once it was given to Cameron, it just became Cameron's world and universe and style. But it didn't begin necessarily with him in terms of the Marines, but it did fit.
I think it works well, though, because it's like so many films that work really well, which is the more fantastical elements of the story are not central to the story. In the way that, for example, the Nolan Batman films are great films because they're not about the over-the-top Batman. Basically, it's about like a vigilante detective who happens to dress as Batman. And this is Marines having to investigate something that's happening somewhere. Something has happened.
It's their job. It's grunt work. And I mean, that's what he loved about the original. It's just truck drivers in space. He said one friend said, it's a crew of a ship who aren't quite getting on anymore, and they've been out in the space too long. They can go, but they were kind of blue collar people. And if you watch all Cameron's films, all his heroes are blue collar workers. Think of The Abyss and Terminator. They're just ordinary people. He loves that. And he thought, well, I can't do truck drivers. I can't do sort of pilots and space crews again because Ridley's done that. But the Marines idea is great because I can, really his heroes are the privates, the commanding officers. Anyone with authority in Aliens is useless or corrupt. It's all the underlings who work. And that's kind of Cameron's thinking. Don't trust authority. It's his attitude towards studios, basically.
Exactly.
Burke represents the studio in his head, I think.
Think so. He's the authority, the interfering person, pulling the strings, kind of thing. So we're seeing one of the first special edition scenes at the moment, which is Ripley in the kind of projector room. I don't know, holodeck, we'll call it, whatever they want to call it in this. So we chose the special edition tonight, which I think for many people, I mean, the special edition is also called the director's cut in some regions, depends where you are. We chose this because it generally seems to be, since it came out, the more accepted version of the film in popularity. It seems to have overtaken the theatrical cut.
It's an interesting debate, isn't it? I mean, I still err on the theatrical cut because I don't need to know, how what happened at the base beforehand. Because it's a lovely sort of sense of mystery about we've lost communication with them, and you think, well, shit, what's happened? They've got to get back out, and then you catch up with events as soon as the Marines land there. That not knowing is great. I know you get the derelicts and all that thing we're going to see in a few minutes, but I mean, it's nice elements. The backstory that the motherhood thing that ties her with her daughter and what happened. I suppose it's very Cameron kind of stuff. But again, for me, I still love that the way the theatrical cut is very lean on those things. I accept the motherhood thing as who Ripley is. It's a development of it. I don't need it over explained, but
I think for most fans, it would probably be the theatrical cut would have been all right if they just put the minigun scene back in it. Because everyone that is the scene. Everyone loves the sentry gun scene. But when we get to that, there's some really interesting stuff about what that brings to the film. We'll talk about that when it comes up later in the movie. But,
yes, there are the elements of the special edition. I don't think the Ridley director's cut of Alien is better.
No,
it poses problems, doesn't it? Because the cocooning idea that it throws out contradicts Aliens. Then Ridley Scott, I think, does not recognise the Aliens plot line as regards the life cycle. He just doesn't talk about it. So I visited the set of Alien Covenant, and I went around the creature shop. And it's a marvelous thing to do. You've got to touch the aliens and see all the models, most of which were replaced by CGI, sadly, in the film. But I said to the head model maker, I said, what about the Queen? And they went, don't talk to Ridley about the Queen. Just don't mention the Queen. He doesn't recognize it. Wow. But it's what you were saying about a bit like Nolan, because actually Cameron isn't that interested in the mythology of aliens. He doesn't expand that in the way that Ridley Scott gets obsessed with it.
Yeah.
He actually, all he's interested in is the biology of aliens. The question marks, where do the eggs come from? All those things. That's what he wanted to expand on. And that's because I think he's more of a scientist. He's more of an engineer. He trained to be an engineer and a physicist at different times. Then Ridley is much more, obsessive about kind of the detail and mythology. And he didn't even use Giga. So I think Ridley, Cameron, he wanted like Nolan. I think he's a rationalist director, but at a very heightened level.
Definitely, I think the idea that this film really introduces the concept of the aliens being very insect-like, with a hive and a queen, like ants or bees or any kind of hierarchical insect society, with a queen that lays eggs. It grounds it quite nicely in the real world. It makes that little leap of what people understand. So it kind of maybe makes it a bit more terrifying because you can understand kind of how it works.
Yes. Yeah, it makes more sense. It's one of the things maybe we'll talk about in a little bit, but you say things that don't quite scan. It's like if they've secreted a nest that looks vaguely like the derelict, it contradicts the idea that the alien takes on the DNA form of the thing it's been hosted in, because that's carried on into the various sequels that the alien comes out. It's adopted human characteristics, or it's adopted a dog-like characteristic, or an ox-like characteristic in Alien 3. They wouldn't be secreting nest things that look like the derelict. They would be doing something different, or maybe they were. We can discuss it. It's very anal detail.
It is. But our community love getting into the nitty gritty of some of this stuff sometimes. But anyway,
we're not even in the nest yet. We haven't got 12V426 yet.
We're not. So we've got a question from Sparky John, one of our community members here for you.
Yeah.
What do you really think of Prometheus and Alien Covenant as part of the alien mythology?
We were talking about this before we came there a little bit. I don't really like those films. I think visually, I love Ridley Scott and I love the way he looks. I think Alien is a masterpiece. And certainly you can't argue that he can construct a film on a kind of visual level. I think they spoil it. This need to do the origin story of the creatures. There's a wonderful thing about both Alien and Aliens, to extent the other two sequels, is that I don't need to know where the alien came from.
No, I completely agree.
I can imagine where it came from, and I love imagining, because that's a mystery for me.
This is actually something we've discussed on other watch parties about other films, and something I've said with other guests is, and it seems to be a trend in the more modern films, it's in Highlander, I don't need to know where the Immortals come from. I don't need to know how the Force works, because anything you can tell me and show me on screen is not as great as my imagination can come up with.
Absolutely. It's a Stephen King thing. He says horror is great. That's kind of showing people like things like the chestburster is horror. But he says terror is the ultimate thing a creator wants to create. Terror is the knock on the door before you've opened it.
Yeah.
Because he said, whatever you can put on the other side of the door, it's never as good as what's going on in the imagination of the reader or the watcher. There's something. So that's terror. He said, to be able to create terror is really hard. And that's why I like not the theatrical cut more than the director's cut, because we've lost communication. Immediately, my mind is kind of filling in the gaps of what the hell's happened on LV-426. There are children there, there are families there. And we're getting to the point where they go out and see the derelict. I don't, that's the knock on the door. That we've lost communication line. Yeah,
I don't think we need to see that. I mean, we've got a question here from Palmer Mickey on YouTube chat, which is, Ian, do you know the story of Cameron's pitch simply being him boldly striding into the producer's office and writing aliens on a flip chart and getting funded on the spot?
This is a slightly mythological story, but it's true. The basis of it. Gordon Carroll tells his story in his biography. Gordon Carroll's another one of the producers. And they'd kind of been waiting for his presentation, Hill, Geiler, and Gordon Carroll, and probably some Fox people as well. And they expected the works, assistants and slideshows as it was at the time, and sort of script pages and all sorts of things. And he walked in on his own and didn't even have a script on him. He just had I think the argument is it was a whiteboard or it was a blackboard or even a flip chart. No one could quite get that straight. But he went up to it and he wrote alien on this, say it's flip chart. And he just stood there. He hadn't said a word. And they were kind of looking at each other a bit confused about what the hell is he doing? And he went back to it and he put an S on the end of the aliens. And they were kind of like, okay, they're starting to get it, because obviously that was his concept, just didn't word. And he went back again, still hadn't said a word. And he drew 2 lines through the S. It was like a dollar symbol. Then, he drew, and I don't know if this is true, but he drops the pen or the piece of chalk and he walks out. I'm sure that's not quite true. It's kind of like a drop the mic moment.
Yeah.
But Gordon Carroll said they greenlit it that day. But I'm sure anyone who knows anything about studio politics, negotiations, know things aren't ever that simple. There are lawyers and things. But I think they must have agreed with the concept that day that, yes, well, this is great. And it's absolutely how you do the sequel. You take the basic concept, the alien stowed away on the ship, that's unkillable. You break it, you make the alien killable by the soldiers, and then you make the situation even worse by having too many to kill, like Zulu.
Exactly. That's something I'm going to talk about with you later on, about the Zulu comparisons to bits of it. There's some really strong comparisons. We're going back to a couple of communities, a couple of questions from the community here. We've got one from Ian Quixote in our Discord chat. Hi, Ian. Completely psyched to have you back. Thank you for making time for hanging out with us. Can you comment on Gale Anne Hurd and her role in Aliens being made from a film history perspective? We discuss Cameron as we should, but it seems like Hurd gets overlooked.
No, that's very true. Obviously, I do a quick potted history. Obviously, Gale Anne Hurd and James Cameron worked at Roger Corman's studio together. That's where they met. And famously, Roger Corman, this is he was meeting Battle Beyond the Stars, and it was all going horribly wrong. And Roger Corman was getting very angry, and Gale Anne Hurd was his assistant at the time. And she said, go and find out what's going on, and knock a few heads together, basically. So she went off and she went to the model shop where a very young James Cameron had been recently employed. And this kind of tall, blonde Canadian guy meets her there, and she thinks he's in charge because he's James Cameron. He starts showing her all the models, because it's James Cameron, they're all fantastic models, and it's all looking really good. And she goes back to Corman and says, well, the shoot is a disaster. The director's not getting anything organized. They're weeks behind. Absolutely going to get Corman's fury. But she says the model shop guy knows what he's doing, and he got promoted straight away. And of course, they then got to know each other and fell in love, and they had this pact about if they ever make a film outside of Corman, as they wanted to do, then they would. She would be the producer and he would be the director. That was The Terminator, of which she was absolutely pivotal in not only getting it funded, but she was pivotal in writing Sarah and creating all the kind of elements of it. She had a real creative input, and in getting things organized, because they had to do. It was a hard shoot, The Terminator, very little money, and she was so important in that. And I think in some ways she's even more important to Aliens, because they were in Britain, they were in Pinewood. He was out of his depth in the sense of it was his first studio film, and he was sort of on his own. She was his ally, she was his wife. and she was his protector in many ways. But she had a huge creative input. She was very important to how Ripley and Newt are portrayed. She was, I mean, you know, there's probably a story that a lot of the close-ups of even Velasquez with her armaments, she couldn't handle the guns very well. And that's actually Gale Anne Hurd, because she used to go to the gun range with her husband, you know, to blow off steam. So she knew how to use weapons. So every time you get a close-up, it isn't Velasquez, it's Gale Anne Hurd's hands on it. Yeah, she was a tough cookie, Gale Anne Hurd.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be a tough cookie, not only to produce James Cameron, but probably to be married to James Cameron.
Yes, we won't get into James Cameron and fidelity with leading ladies in his films.
But I think the point is absolutely right. I think she's hugely important. And yeah, there's a parallel you can draw biographically between the leading ladies in the films, the characters, Sarah Connor, Ripley, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantoni, Lindsay Brigham, isn't it, in The Abyss, all those characters and his wives, you know, and particularly Gale Anne Hurd as producer. I think there's a mirror image. I think he wrote a lot of Gale Anne Hurd into his version of Ripley, that she's formidable, but she's kind of human as well, vulnerable, and has all those kind of fantastic qualities to her.
Exactly. And she's, I mean, if you look at just her career of the stuff she's produced some fantastic stuff in the past, not just some of the James Cameron stuff. It was, you know, she's done some real big hitters, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s. She did a lot of the big stuff. Of course, more recently she was a producer, I believe, on Walking Dead for quite a while.
Yeah, she's been on that for quite a long time on Walking Dead. Yeah, because obviously they went their separate ways, you know, after The Abyss, and that's his own story. I don't know if you've done The Abyss yet, but that's a whole different, you know, kettle of fish. And they got divorced, and they didn't work together anymore. But when I did the Alien Vault book, I interviewed both Gale Anne Hurd and James Cameron, the Terminator Vault book, and I interviewed them both for it, and they were very respectful of one another. You know, they kind of talked a lot about they couldn't have done it without each other, and especially the first one, and Aliens. They said, you know, it was really, you know, times it felt like just the two of us. Obviously, he had his relationship with the cast, but you know, when it came to the crew and it came to Fox and the producers, I think they were their own allies, and that bond was very important.
It's quite interesting. But also something we're going to just want to ask you about as well is, I know that quite famously, James Remar had to leave the cast of the film.
Yes. I was going to talk about that when we see we can spot it, because there's a shot.
There is,
in the nest.
But my understanding is as well, what they did with the Marines originally was to get the camaraderie between them. They did lots of intensive training together. And then as Hicks, replacement for Hicks, came in, it helped because he hadn't had that bonding with him, because he's supposed to be new to the unit anyway. So it kind of played into the story of the Marines quite nicely.
They all did military training, apart from Scrawny Weaver, because she was finishing a film in France, you know, somewhere she was finishing a film. Hanover Street, I think she was finishing. You can put that one up. And anyway, she's not a Marine. She comes late into it. And they didn't do any of the hierarchy. So William Pope's character, Gorman, and obviously Burke didn't do it. And of course, as you say, Michael Biehn didn't, because he was parachuted into the production with 3 days' notice. Already quite pissed off he didn't get the role to begin with, having done The Terminator. But as soon as, again, Gale Anne Hurd did the call. Apparently the call goes and his phone rings and he picks it up and it's Gale Anne Hurd going, "Have you got a passport?" And he goes, "Well, yeah." She goes, "Okay, here's a flight." And it's as simple as that. It's just the commands over them. And he didn't argue. You wouldn't. He was like, "Okay, I'm going." And he did. But he came into it late. But there was a real, they were in some kind of Holiday Inn near Pinewood. And they all kind of went to the pub together, and they kind of had barbecues together. And I think the camaraderie between the Marines was great. They were kind of, I'm sure they all riled Bill Paxton, because he was kind of the goofball of the platoon. But
he was very fondly spoken about. Everyone who's ever worked with him, though, absolutely adored him. He was supposed to be the nicest, funniest guy.
I met him a couple of times just in doing Empire, and he absolutely fantastic, hilarious, great sense of humor. Because he also goes back to Roger Corman. Yeah, he tells the story when he met James Cameron for the first time. He was like between acting jobs. He wasn't big at the time. He was doing some paint, just whatever he could get at Corman, and he was just fixing something. And then Cameron's doing some set, and he kind of sees Bill Paxton, and he sort of goes over and goes, "Can you paint?" And Bill Paxton's trying to introduce himself. "Yeah, I'm an actor," but he goes, here's a brush, go and paint that wall for me. He goes, that was my introduction to Jim. You know, he said, and it never changed. It's just like, you did what you were told, but he was the best guy in the world. You know, they were absolutely best friends, but it was from then on, you know, he was kind of his lucky charm.
Yeah. So we're seeing this video phone here, which of course is quite futuristic for the time. And of course, we're doing this now. You and I are doing this here, but this is very similar. And I believe it shows an AT&T logo, I think, at one point on it. I'm not sure.
When it switches off, isn't it? When she takes the
and
thing out.
It's very similar to an AT&T prototype video phone they had around this time in some of the promotional videos you've seen. And then again, we saw a very similar, further evolved model of it in Total Recall. Very similar, but it was obviously leaning onto the sort of the technology that was being futurized by the companies then. So it's still fairly grounded in reality here.
Yeah, it's really interesting that the things that have sort of gone. I mean, it's like you look at like Blade Runner, and in a way, the kind of the photo technology he uses has come to pass. But we haven't had replicant people yet, or flying cars yet. Flying cars seems to be the one that defeats everyone in all the kind of films.
It really does.
Have done flying cars. We've not got those yet.
Not quite.
Yes, the kind of computers and photo equipment. I always laugh at computer readouts and displays. I think films really betray the age they were made. Those readouts. They do,
especially in this, because you'll see the computers with the very old-fashioned low-res monitors, drawing line by line, making beeps as every character comes up on screen. But in the story of the film, how long is it supposed to have been that they've been going from space to the colony now? It's supposed to be a few weeks or months, is it? In hypersleep for in this period? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know what they did. Is it a year? No. What is the distance?
I'm sure one of our amazing community members.
Yes,
this is the great thing here. It's like having all the knowledge of the world on tap. In a couple of minutes, someone will type the answer for
trust
me.
We can tap into. And go,
exactly.
How long have they all been in accident? Obviously, there are references to Alien going on here with the empty shots of the empty ship, which is how Alien, which is kind of a little homage to Ridley, and that kind of lovely spareness, which is a very Ridley Scott thing, which isn't James Cameron at all. You know, I can really feeling him itching to get going. Let's wake him up. Let's wake him up. You know, go do a bit of Ridley stuff.
And while the film's a little quiet now, there's an elephant in the room for those of us who play computer games.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're aware of this, about the train wreck of a game, Aliens Colonial Marines, which was stated to be canon several years ago.
Right.
Do you know of this game?
I think I know of the game vaguely. I mean, I'm not a big gamer, so
No, it was an unofficial sequel to Aliens.
Okay.
And it showed that Hicks lived, and it was someone else in his cryopod. There basically lots of horrendous stuff. Hadley's Hope didn't actually explode.
Right.
It was stated
retrofitting, as they call it, don't they?
It was horrendous. They actually got Michael Biehn back to voice Hicks on the planet.
Yeah, because it's a very complicated. It's rather boring, but it's kind of a complicated thing around copyright and Aliens. And for some reason, all the Marines, or most of the Marine actors, kept their own copyright to their images, and that was one of the reasons that they couldn't show Michael Biehn in Alien 3.
That's right.
Yes, because he wouldn't let them have the copyright to his face, basically.
But he came back with his image and voiced the character again in this game.
Yeah, obviously they paid him enough money to do that. But, he got over his disappointment and he came back to do the game.
One of the sad things you do find in the game is you find you find various other Marines who have disappeared, who were grabbed by aliens in the film, and you find that they're in a wall somewhere and they've had a chest burst to come out of them. It's not very fitting for, it's not very good. It's a terrible game. The chat are just slaughtering the game at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay.
One of the particular ones you do find is Hudson, and he's got a chest burst to come out of him.
Oh, but I suppose it's somehow feasible, but it all blows up. So
yeah,
they nuke it from space. Come on, people.
Yes, it's pretty terrible. So according to the script, it was 3 weeks between them leaving Earth to get to the colony. They were in hypersleep for 3. Seems strange they put them in hypersleep for just 3 weeks.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, in the end,
it might be.
Cameron just wants the image, doesn't he? He wants to replicate Alien, and he does. He's quite rigorous in following many of the Alien images and the rhythms of Alien. in terms of the spacecraft out and the waking up and breakfast and the routines of the crew. He's actually, it's much more of a sequel than sometimes people think, just merely in terms of referencing the original film and playing to the original film's sort of narrative structure. It's just accelerated and expanded, and it's got the S on the end. Basically, it's multiplied.
It's great though seeing these scenes here with just the camaraderie between them, and I like the fact Ripley feels like an outsider.
Yes, it's very good. Yeah, and Hudson starts talking about it being a bug hunt, isn't it? She's seen one of those things before, and you get that whole idea of, have these Marines sort of encountered other aliens?
I've always taken it to be maybe sort of like a Starship Troopers type reference, that they've maybe have dealt with some extraterrestrial insects on a planet or something at some point.
Yeah. I in some ways, I never wanted that. I always like this idea that the only alien creatures they've ever encountered are the actual aliens, and obviously the derelicts, the dead space. So it's a new thing, but the bug hunt thing, I'm sure it's just, I bet it's just something that Cameron got from Michael Hare. I think it's just a Vietnam thing. It's just another bug hunt, but yes.
And the scene that I remember the Monday in school after this was aired at the weekend, everyone in the cafeteria at lunchtime, the knives.
The knives, yes, trying to cut their fingers off. And of course, famously, Paxton didn't know they were going to do it. It wasn't in the screenplay, and it's not even in the novelization. That scene. It's just something that they plotted on set. It's a great idea. I mean, this is Cameron's genius. Here you have is storytelling in motion. So the film moves. And he does exposition. He never stops to do exposition. He does it on the move. It's a brilliant gift, and few directors can do it. So in that sequence, she thinks a throwaway moment that introduces you to the Paxton Hudson character, relationship of the troops, and gives the insight into the fact that Bishop is he's an artificial because he cuts his finger. And then you get the reaction from her, and so you immediately the weirdness of Lance Henriksen is explained, and of course it's the callback to Alien and Ash, and all those things start to slot in. But he does that so efficiently. We've crossed all those kind of narrative hurdles within 2 minutes. Plus, we get a bit of Ripley's a bit unstable as well. So
she's quite clearly after the events in Alien, she's a little untrusting of synthetic people. However. It's also one of the nice threads about this film as we get towards the end. I'm sorry if we're spoiling the film for anyone who's seen it before. There's quite an element of redemption in this about him earning the trust and basically being the most trustworthy member of the crew.
Yes, absolutely. It's the complete opposite of what happens in of Alien, which is again a brilliant flip from Cameron. I think it's interesting in the screenplay, the original screenplay, Ripley is a lot more sort of messed up by the events. She's a lot more traumatized. So you understand kind of why she has to go back. And again, it's the same plot as Rambo 2. He has to go back to confront his demons. So they kind of played it down either in the edit or in the shoot on the film. Although, it's going to be such a good actress, you get it and buy it. But it's one of those things, I think, can they have explained her motivation more? If you're looking for weaknesses in it, it's a very small thing, but she's persuaded to go back, to confront the worst thing in the universe. Quite easily, really.
What's interesting here on this scene, though, is she's got this look of disgust that why will they not believe me that this thing, this alien with blood that was acid and it killed everybody was there. And the rest of them, quite rightly, are looking like she's got an orange, she's got a 40-foot long arm or something stupid, something ludicrous, because they're thinking it's absolute nonsense. So it's quite interesting to see the difference that they think she's full of crap, basically.
And also, this is the first time we get the Ripley of old, really. The listen to me. This is what we should be doing. Get serious. It's Ripley's job in the world is to go, get serious about this thing. She always says. But you can see her sort of calling back to her previous performance. That the nature of the character. She hasn't sort of, she's been different up until now. She sort of clicks back in. She goes, I hope, she's just kind of like got that faraway look in her eyes, and she's kind of gone back in her memory. And I love her performance. In fact, we always talk about Aliens a lot about how much we love the Marines and the lines and the action. But it's so held together by Sigourney Weaver. Absolutely,
she really
the
is.
heart of it. Yeah.
But she's a mother in this. She becomes a mother and a leader. Even she takes a motherly role with the Marines where their command structure fails in a little bit in the film.
Yeah. We're going to see my favourite scene of all of the whole film, and probably all of Cameron's things, but we'll get to it. But yeah, absolutely. You get the thing. Ripley takes charge not because she wants to, but because she has to. But that's a very Cameron thing. That's how he is on set. No one else can deal with this. I will deal with it. He's quite close to Ripley in many ways. I think he wrote a lot of himself into the way Ripley is.
If we look, he's a big thing for strong female protagonists. Yes. Sarah Connor evidently is one of the toughest, and it does make me wonder about. I don't know how I feel about I'll hold my hand up. I'm not the biggest fan of Avatar. I think it was all right. Yes. It's probably one of my lesser favorite films.
Yeah, and it's not in what I call the blue phase, is it? Which is the kind of right up until sort of probably you can include maybe a bit of True Lies in it. That's the blue phase is that front half where it's just those fantastic science fiction action films and most of The Abyss and great stuff. Some good bits in True Lies, and then Titanic. But certainly as a piece of filmmaking, it's bravura, and I know it's romance. But once, Avatar, I'm kind of with you a little bit. The storytelling is very neatly done, and he does what he can do so well. He's like Grimm, the Grimm brothers. He's just a great fairy tale writer. It's so beautifully kind of measured. But he's got very into ecology and the kind of growing of the jungle and all that stuff. And
but this is the stuff I like. This is the fact these power loaders are nothing fantastical. They're a worn bit of machinery. It's a forklift truck. It's just a
do people know that the origin of a lot of these ideas was the fact he'd written or partly written a screenplay called Mother, sort of around about the time before the Terminator. It's kind of very early thing he was working on. He was trying to still at Roger Corman, and it basically involved a kind of an encounter between a tough woman and an alien creature. And he grafted a lot of Mother into Aliens. He admits it. He said, I took a lot of the idea, and the whole power loader stuff comes from Mother. And I think people have probably seen Xenogenesis, his 10-minute short, the first thing he ever filmed. That's on. You can find it on YouTube if you haven't seen it. And it's very primitive by comparison with his films. But you can see where all the ideas, there's a lot of power loader ideas are there already, a lot of the visual things. Coming in, so these were already sort of in his head that he wanted to do a power loaded sequence, but even long before the Terminator. In fact, interestingly, Mother, the screenplay, was also called E.T., but then Spielberg made E.T., so we had to change it and he called it Mother after that. And Mother is also, a lot of that's in Avatar as well. So a lot of his early screenplays went into his films.
Well, if you look in Avatar, the power loaders are basically rehashed as the combat suits that they use in
suits. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've got a question from our YouTube chat. We've got Alienator Kit saying, question for Ian. It's great to have you at this watch party. Where do you see the future of the Alien franchise? Could this franchise work as a potential short series, I guess, or a mini series?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? It's Noah Hawley is doing it for Hulu and Fox, and with Ridley Scott executive producing it. I like Noah Hawley. He made the Fargo series based on the Coen Brothers film, and I think they're very smart. And he made Legion, the kind of X-Men offshoot, which I thought was very, very clever. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's got a very different feel. It's quite surreal. He's a very smart guy. I interviewed him once, and he's written a few novels. And I mean, they haven't said a lot about it. But he said, I'm taking this very seriously. This is an incredible honor. And I'm a huge Aliens fan, an Alien fan. My only concern about it was they say it's set on Earth. And it was always the rule, it was actually a Sigourney Weaver rule that you can never bring it to Earth. As soon as you're on Earth, it's over. So it has to be, out in space. That's the thing. Earth is this kind of thing that's behind them. And I still feel that. So that's the one that worries me. But I don't know if they're shooting yet. They might be. It's all enshrouded in secrecy. But it will be a television series, and that will be where it goes. So no Alien Covenant sequel. None of the things that will bridge it with Alien. unless they'll do things maybe in the television series that might make sense of that.
Yeah.
I think the easiest thing in the world to me was just do another sequel, but make it good.
Yes.
Alien Resurrection, just move on from that, bring in a good team, and just make sure it works. Just do a good alien story.
Would you have liked to have seen the Neil Blomkamp stuff happen?
Yeah, in a way, I would have been interested. That kind of retro, rebooting it from a certain point in time. It's a lot of people are doing now. I would have been, I think Blomkamp's he's a good, talented guy. I'm very good at the kind of gritty science fiction it requires. An older Ripley and the return of Michael Biehn, all those things you kind of would have wanted. Certainly, it got poo-poo because of Ridley Scott. He went in and said, "I don't want this to happen. I want to do my things."
Which is it's a shame, because going back to Prometheus, having seen it a few times, I think Prometheus would have been a far better film if it had not had to be connected with aliens in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of have. In some ways, I'd love to have been the original, the Michael Spates original version, when it was Alien Paradise or whatever. It had a number of different names, I think. And I would have liked to have seen just an Alien prequel that was an Alien prequel. And you can see all the things in Prometheus that are simply an alien thing that's just been rubbed out and drawn again.
It felt to me like there were two scripts, and someone had said, right, you've got to merge these two scripts together, and neither half of it came out as really a whole film. It just seemed a bit strange in parts. It just didn't work.
It didn't really disguise the fact it had been written in a different way. And they just, it's like these things are a bit like aliens, but they're not really. But
exactly. So we're seeing such a great scene now where they're just flying down to the dropship. Yeah,
the dropship down. I say again, brilliant. I mean, we just talk about filmmaking. It's like it's basically a montage sequence, but you're getting every character given to you in a flash. Gorman can't handle it. He's feeling sick because he's not up to the whole job. He's not trained to do it. Riser's looking uncomfortable, and then you get, of course, famously, Hicks is asleep, and because he's done so many, and he's such a sort of an old hand at this. So you get the crew, and he's doing it as he's moving the plot. You're taking them. It's just a movement shot. It's sort of taking them from A to B to planet surface, but you're doing character beats the whole way along. If you're an aspiring screenwriter, there are many ones to look at, Casablanca and all the kind of structure and all the kind of brilliant screenplays. But I would look at Aliens for characterization in a hurry. You do not need backstory if you can do this. No. If you can just show them a drop shot,
it defines them, doesn't it? I mean, we can see Ripley as well. Ripley is cool as a cucumber going on, all right? It's not in her comfort zone, but she doesn't really care because we know she's a pilot. She's done. She could have flown this ship quite possibly. We don't worry about it, but you can just see that the rest of the Marines are kind of whatever. But it is absolutely great. We've got another question here from Sparky John for you, which is, do you think Prometheus ruined the mythology of the space jockey?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely, I do. Again, it's going back to what we were saying. I didn't want to know who the space jockey was. I thought this is a fantastic idea. Is that images, just give you so much. And the idea of the derelicts, it looked half alive and half a machine, and they went in, and you didn't know what it was made of. They just encountered this kind of calcified thing. It's all from the Giger paintings. And you just went, what the hell? What's out there in the universe? How strange is space? And by explaining it all, it's just a bald guy. It's basically Jason Statham underneath a kind of a funny looking suit. Just kind of absolutely shattered that for me. I mean, Scott said in the making of Prometheus, he just thought if they looked like these kind of elephant things, they would just look silly on the deck of a spaceship. He just couldn't picture it. So he had to get past what he felt was a problem, and they just sort of wrote it as a suit.
Exactly. It's a bit. I don't know. It's my biggest problem with Prometheus is they're the worst scientists in the world.
They are.
They are. You have a guy who maps things and gets lost. The guy who's actually got a mapping system built in his arm. And then you have scientists who go around and stick their fingers in all the strange liquid they find. It's like
I know they are just they're just a terrible bunch.
They really are. But we've got a couple of other people. We've got Jorg van Amelen, forgive me for saying that wrong. Greetings from Germany, long-time Alien fan.
Greetings to you.
We've got another question here from our friend Par Mimic, which is, What do you think of Alien versus Predator?
Oh, right. Well, I can't say I love them.
No.
Requiem it's called Requiem, isn't it? It's an abomination. I've only seen it once, but it just doesn't work on any level whatsoever. I suppose there's fun things in Alien versus Predator. If you divorce it from having to be part of the franchise, and I know that it was written to be part of the franchise because you get Lance Henriksen and you get those things that are meant to glue it together. I mean, it's a better prequel in some ways than Prometheus, because at least it kind of honors the kind of what comes afterwards. But it's Paul Thomas Anderson, isn't it?
Yeah, he's
the other Paul William Anderson, isn't it? It's the other one, Paul W. Anderson.
Paul W.S. Yes, because
Paul W.S. Anderson, not the brilliant Paul Thomas Anderson.
No. This is the interesting thing, because Paul W.S., when he decided to use his theatrical name, he put W.S. there because he was fed up of getting people confusing him with Paul Thomas Anderson.
Right.
If I was him, I would be happy to be confused with the other Paul Anderson.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we've seen the sort of the Marines.
Well, I always forget. I watched it again. I've recently, last year, or the last 2 or 3 years, I wrote a book about James Cameron. And so I've watched the film again quite a few times. And it always surprised me how long it takes to get to the nest. In my head,
it really does.
Yeah, I always thought there was actually, they get to the nest very quickly. But actually, it's rather like the pacing is very similar to Alien. It takes a little while. It takes about 40 minutes to get to the aliens, as it does in the original film. He actually models the kind of the build-up.
It's actually about I looked at it earlier. I skipped through the film to remind myself of it.
Yeah.
They don't actually get into where the alien nest is. It's around an hour and 10 minutes into the film.
An hour and 10 minutes. Yeah,
it's about an hour and 10. It's quite a long way. It's quite a lot. But it moves at a hell of a pace. I mean, we're 3/4 of an hour into the film at the moment, aren't we?
You do not notice, do you? Absolutely. No. Bang, bang, bang.
It really, really is. I mean, we've got a question here from Damien in our community. This is something I was going to actually mention to you as well. Have you listened to the Audible Alien 3 unproduced script book?
The unproduced. I've read the comic. They've done a comic version of it, and I read that sort of in again because I was doing James Cameron stuff, and I just wanted to kind of build up a bit of a knowledge. And it wasn't as good as I'd hoped it would be. It was quite fussy, and there was all this politics in it, and I know comics don't quite convey as it.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to the audiobook version, and it's very strange. It shows it's very kind of late 80s because it's Cold War. It's like space Russians versus space Americans, and some of it gets a bit silly about Bishop and his plastic knees make a big point in the film, and it's a bit it's William Gibson's or his obsessions sort of get thrown into it. I mean, the Alien 3 cycle of disaster it's a fantastic story in its own right. I've got a blog. I've not finished it. I've got a blog I've written about why I love Alien 3, the kind of assembly cut, and it's very flawed, but I have a great passion for it. And I thought I'd write a blog about it. It's already 6,000 words long, and I haven't even got to the film yet. It's just about what had happened before, all the things that went wrong between Aliens and Alien 3. I'll get around to finishing it at some point and putting it up on the internet. Well, when you do, please give us a link and we'll get it to our community. They'd love to read that. But now we're seeing the inside of the Hadley's Hope sort of
you think you don't sort of because you're so into the film, you don't realize the use of the screens is brilliant. The fact that he's got kind of vision. He's basically doing multi-screen long before we had multi-screen. Yeah. So you can have other bits of narrative, and that's complex to do because you've just got to film those bits and get them on the screens. Yeah, it's a lot to handle that.
It really is. And the interesting thing is as well, this is again such an influence on other movies, in particular movies that follow this. Last week we watched for our horror community, we watched Deep Star 6, which lifts enormous chunks from this film and from Alien.
Is that one of the Abyss rip-offs? Although
it's a bit like it's a bit of an Abyss rip-off as well, where they in a deep sea colony they unearth a prehistoric monster that's like an alien. But there's some scenes that are very similar to this, of people with personal cameras and body readers on a bank like we're seeing there, and the interaction. There's scenes of interaction between them all sat around a very claustrophobic dining table
Yeah.
with all tatty stuff around them. So it's
This
all very
pure rip-off, basically.
Yeah. Exactly. But I do like this way. We're just seeing them going through the crew quarters in a very, you can see this is a very functional kind of living quarters that they're going through.
But also you've got tech noir. You've got the Cameron look. He was, he's very interesting on, he felt he could not do Ridley Scott images as well as Ridley Scott. And I suppose that's right. He said, I replicated them, but I had to do my own thing, the pace and the kind of the storytelling. But I think at times he gets very close to Ridley Scott. Scott's more textured maybe and has the stuff in the air, but I love all the rain and I love kind of the dripping. He gets all that stuff very well.
What I would say is though, this set here of all sort of these corridors, which are great for claustrophobia, and again, this is something Cameron worked on doing a lot of the art on. Galaxy of Terror, certain scenes of it, certain elements of it, very, you can feel it. I mean, this is going back to we've done a couple of Roger Corman films recently. We've done Galaxy of Terror, we did Battle Beyond the Stars. And everyone, we introduced a lot of people to Battle Beyond the Stars. What a wonderful film that punched above its weight.
Absolutely.
But production effects.
It's an amazing, I mean, look at John Sayles' script. Obviously, Cameron doing both model work and in the end doing sets as well. I mean, so he's got the direction is a little bit saggy in places. But it's great. All the people in it. It's a wonderful film. Magnificent. I saw that in the cinema. I kind of went to see it.
But it's great to be able to see from the Corman school of, I mean, what's wonderful to see is you can see so many people who've been big hitters now in the industry, like especially James Cameron being probably the biggest hitter of all. At the school of Corman.
Coppola, Jonathan Demme, Joe Dante. It's fantastic. Who he gave us. But I think more than anyone, Cameron, because he was effects and models. He learned about doing things, how you can do things on the hoof, put them together. In fact, it was an $18 million budget, I think they have on Aliens, but he makes it stretch, because he's so skillful about putting situations together cheaply. He's got Roger Corman in his head going, cut costs. And he knows how to do it. And you believe in his world straight away. And but you said about Galaxy of Terror. That is a bit of it is Aliens, basically. If you look at the shape of it, and it's like a first run at it. It's terrible in many ways, but
it's not the best of films, but it's. I mean, what I really enjoy about Aliens is just the reuse of everything. I mean, the APC here is actually it's an airport tug.
Yes, it is from Heathrow, a British Airways airport tug. And it was too heavy, wasn't it? The stories, it was like, they were like 70 tons, these things. So they're
designed to pull 747s, aren't they? So
they had to get all the lead out of it to move the thing on the set. And it was also there to change the roof because they were all suffocating and they did the fire and all that sequence. But again, fantastic. Just a use of something, to create something that's completely convincing in situ. This kind of battering ram of a vehicle. That you think, that's it. And I reckon because Nolan knows his films. You look at the Tumbler in the Batman films. You think they looked at Aliens. I'm sure they did.
Definitely.
And took that idea of something that could go through walls.
Exactly. They've gone for just gritty. I mean, what I like about this universe is it's in the future, but it's not. As I said, it's not laser hoverboards. It's not, it's not everything's fixed by waving a magic light over it. It heals your wounds.
I think it's great quality actually of Ridley Scott's is that he makes futuristic films as if they were period pieces. So they're set in the future, but everything about them is worn out and broken and overused and lived in. So, and that's true of Cameron as well. He doesn't do glistening Star Warsy futures.
No,
he does these kind of versions of present day with a little bit of futurizing on them, but battered and bruised as we know them. So it makes them much more realistic. I have this thing. This bit of it in Aliens. I love smoking in science fiction films. Not that I advocate smoking. I just love the imagery of it in things like Blade Runner and Alien and in Aliens. And it's completely out of date. but somehow it makes the film sort of kind of authentic and 70s and kind of gritty.
It does. What we saw, where we saw the executive board of When-Yutani all sat around, they were chain smoking with it on the desk, and it does. It makes it feel more lived in.
Sigourney Weaver, she's having one to get her stress, and it's really interesting. I just think it makes them somehow more convincing in a way that they shouldn't be. Here we go, the face huggers.
Yeah. Cindy Settles on YouTube says, fighting aliens on hoverboards. Don't say it. Don't. Don't. I said to the Discord chat earlier before we went on the air that with Disney owning so much now, it's only a matter of time before we get the inevitable Muppets versus aliens. And
I don't know. I mean, I think they were slightly confounded by some of the adult franchises they got inherited from buying Fox. And what do you do with them? And I think because they're so protective of their core family brand, they might, I think that's why they're putting Aliens sort of on Hulu, and they're putting it in a sort of quarantined area.
Well, there is, even if you've got Disney. If you've got Disney Plus in the UK, we have something called Star, which contains all the Hulu content.
Yes,
but it's the same. Like I say, it's kind of it's locked off, isn't it, from the main? But it's going to be interesting. To me, I will be fair to them. They've got enough money to do something decent with it, and I think
I think Noah Hawley's a serious guy, and I think he's a clever guy, and I think they'll, whether we totally buy the story or not, it's going to look right and feel right, and hopefully be scary. I mean,
we can certainly say that anything, even though it's Hulu, we'll call it a Disney Plus show because that's where the money's coming from for it. If we look at something like the production quality of a show like Mandalorian, that looks incredible. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that it's going to at least look tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see it. I'm worried and skeptical, like all sort of fans probably are. But I can't wait still. I want to see more of this stuff. And they'll get back to these, right on screen right now, this kind of core value. It's a horror movie primarily, and you've got to play to the horror stuff.
Exactly. And the real joy about this film is the aliens aren't on screen very much at all. As we said, we're going to be like an hour and 10 before the aliens are even into it. And that was one of the problems I had with things like AVP and some of the latter stuff. I don't need to have them on screen all the time. It goes back to the Jaws mentality of you need to be wondering what they're doing, but you don't want to see what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's knock on the door again. It's keep them at bay until you absolutely have to. And also, it's Cameron's structuring. It's kind of, to give a very obvious metaphor, it's the roller coaster and it's the clanking. What we're doing at the moment is we're doing the clanking.
Yeah,
we're going up, and you're getting more and more wound up with the clanking
because
you can see that the kind of top is coming. And once it goes, and the second half of Aliens, you often forget to breathe. You're just kind of like, you're so gripped by it. But he's done all the work. He's done all the clanking. Again, introducing us to Newt and giving a very clever idea, giving it a very human dimension, and the mother-daughter thing that builds and builds in the film. And as soon as you put a little girl in, it changes the game a little bit. From Aliens was all adults, and they were grown.
Exactly.
They weren't
and with the build-up we're seeing now, we don't have an idea of the scale of the problem they're going into. Having seen the film now, obviously we know there's 100, 150 aliens, or whatever the sign said is approximately the number of aliens in there. But it's still the build-up. We don't know really what they're going into, because we saw in the first one alien decimated a crew of
killed
people.
The whole crew. And the whole thing with Alien was, as I was saying, it's about they couldn't kill it. They didn't know how to, because it seemed indestructible. And if you wounded it, the acid blood would wreck the ship. So they had no idea how to deal with it. So it's just kind of, Cameron very bravely sort of shatters that. Once we get into the nest, that they are killable.
Yes,
with the Marines' weapons. But
do they have enough weaponry to kill them all?
Yes, and you can. What you do is replace it with a different problem, an even worse problem.
Exactly. So, quick question here from Jorg. Sorry, you have to leave. Unfortunately, it's nighttime in Germany, so they're off to bed. But hope to get more of your books here in Germany. Will they be translated into German at any point?
Well, I hope so. It's a little bit out of my hands. The deals are done with the publishers, and then the foreign rights are sold to sort of publishers they work with, and they sort of tell me we've sold in Korea and it's all marvelous, and we've sold in Mexico, but very rarely does Germany come up. And I often say, I think it's a great market in Germany. I'm huge film fans. They love genre films. That's kind of core of what I write about. And I don't know. I don't know whether it's to do with German publishers or to do with UK publishers and the relationships. I'm not sure. I would absolutely love to have all my books in German out there. I'm going to nag again. Now you've reminded me. I'm going to nag them again and say, the people have said to me, they want the books. So let's get them over there in German.
That sounds fantastic. So, question for the chat and for yourself.
Yeah.
Did the alien in the first film have a shorter lifespan than the aliens in this film? Oh. I think they mean was it going to live longer? I don't think we've ever seen an alien die of natural causes.
No, there is an argument made, and it was sort of theorized on the first film that actually it's dying because it has a very short lifespan, like an insect. And by the end of the film, it's starting to move much more slower, especially by the bit we get up to the shuttle at the very end. And people go, why is it not, scrambling around? Although you never see it really scramble around that much in Alien. So this idea that, yes, it's winding down towards the end of the film because that's its lifespan. I don't think Cameron really invests in that idea particularly. He's very much like, we're getting to who lays the eggs, so these are the drones that protect the mother. And I don't know, we certainly don't see an old age xenomorph anywhere.
No, not with a walking frame or something go around, But it's interesting. But one again, that's one of the problems I had with the AVP movies was the gestation time seemed to magically fit whatever the plot required.
Yes.
In the films. It played quite hard and fast. Well, as it wanted to. It just altered any of the established rules about them just to make it fit.
Yeah. And of course, Cameron swerves that particular problem. I mean, there is obviously the Burke scene that got cut. So the timing between capture and being put into being cocooned and then being face hugged. I mean, if you take in Alien, I don't know, what would we estimate that to be about? Sort of 10 to 12 hours from Kane seeing the egg to chestburster. And obviously all films mess up time. They concertina the time and they stretch it and play with it. And if you actually broke it down and looked at it, it's a good experiment to do, to take any film like a romantic comedy and start to work out how things, the timing of things. And it does don't work at all. They just cheat in the edit suite to get things. I was watching Friends. It's completely arbitrary to thought, but I was watching Friends. And there's they divide the stories when the characters in different places. And I saw a couple are going to bed, others are having a meal out at the same time. It's like we're just oblivious to it, but actually the timelines are completely wrong. It's like they're all in New York together. Why are they going to bed at 7 o'clock in the evening when this couple are out?
It's something about some films I don't like. The thing really gets me in a lot of films is where they have time zones all over the world and the same thing's happening where something's like 5 hours later and things. Quick thing I just want to say to our audience, this is a request for you guys. If everyone can tweet an image of their watch party setup and tag 80s Sci-Fi Doc on Twitter, that'd be amazing. We'd love to see you all watching us. And Sparky John actually said the alien creature was going into hibernation itself, and apparently that was something Ridley Scott confirmed when he spoke to him some years ago.
Okay, I mean that's Ridley's sort of version of the biology, isn't it? That includes the director's cut stuff about humans being turned into eggs and all that kind of stuff. Interesting, going into hibernation. I don't know how much they thought this stuff through at the time. I think a lot of it gets sort of post analysis. In his head, he's doing a B movie with the visuals that he wants. Cameron's much more kind of, as he writes, he'll think it all through and sort of work out. He's much more precise than Ridley Scott is about the biology. There's Hicks, Hudson. Now it's starting to kick in, isn't it? Now it's starting to build. I'm
starting to see a little bit of something happening.
Hicks smoking.
Yeah.
So again, all that dialogue, all those kind of throw off lines, I'm sure they're all Vietnam things, or Michael Hare. And Michael Hare wrote the voiceover of Apocalypse Now.
Wow.
The voiceover they put on subsequent to filming.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of who he is. He was a great war reporter from Vietnam. And a book called Dispatches, a fantastic book. Just written in this amazing vernacular about men on the front in Vietnam.
We just saw the late great Al Matthews, who passed away, I believe, last year.
Yeah, quite recently, wasn't it? Yeah.
Quite recently, but Apone is the textbook kind of major Marine drill, sergeant, platoon sergeant on everything and every game, movies going forwards. Cigar chomping guy. I do love this bit, and this bit always kind of makes me laugh. The fact that the gun turret on it very conveniently just happens to fold down, but it's not actually that overall higher vehicle.
Yes, ceiling's miles above them. You don't need to worry about it. But no, it's just visuals.
A fun little thing.
A great use of torches here, isn't it? Key
really.
lighting. It's just a Ridley Scott thing, but it's that lovely. You have a dark set and just throw key lights on it. You don't need to light the whole thing.
Yeah,
there
is something really cool. You put a little bit of smoke on the set, and you have a very bright torch, and you get that beam of.
That was one of the things that drove Cameron mad about the tea breaks, is that you got this kind of dry ice wafted to perfection. And the tea lady would open the door and all the dry ice would go out as she came in with the trolley. And he would just kind of scream in his frustration. He just got all the dry ice right. Now they had to have a tea break.
Exactly. So I've got a brilliant fact here from Carla, one of our producers. Al Matthews, who played Apone, who plays the Marine Sergeant in this film, was in real life the first Black Marine to be promoted to the rank of Sergeant during in the field during service in Vietnam, which is great, because that's really life referencing.
Absolutely,
referencing life
resonates, doesn't it, with what Cameron is about? I'm sure they would have talked. There must have been a lot of Apone being a real major to sergeant major to all the guys and having that kind of relationship with them. So there we have the nest. We're starting to look at the weird secretions, which they shouldn't look like the derelict, because the derelict was built by the engineers. And I'm sure someone can come back at me with some kind of rationalization for it. I don't care, because it looks fantastic. But
it does. It does. It's like they're getting a little bit into something to do with the alien now. We're
shifting. And here's my first kind of Christmas theory is kind of in an inverted way. They're going into the Santa's Grotto. This is the Santa's Grotto sequence. Obviously, it's a horror movie version of Christmas, but it's everyone coming to Lapland to go to the grotto. It's just going to go horribly wrong. I haven't got a very strong Christmas argument. There's no Christmas trees in it.
I don't. If they could have put like a little desktop Christmas tree by next to Newton's cradles and things they'd go in the ship, then maybe we'd go with that.
It's all decoration in the grotto, isn't it? It's all the decoration put up by the aliens, you see. We're going to get gripped by the story. He needs to keep talking. He's going to grab us now.
It really does. That's the only problem. Sometimes when we're doing these commentaries, it was, again, we were watching Battle Beyond the Stars, and there was a bit where we all just went silent for about 2-3 minutes. We were just all sucked into it. That
film is, it's just, again, I watched it for the Cameron book, and it's very Roger Corman, isn't it? It's got sort of some odd sequences in it. It's quite sort of lechy in places.
Yes.
But that's a kind of Roger Corman era thing that he was selling to the drive-in market and selling to all those kind of markets. But
we got Carl mentioning that Remar's in a couple of scenes here from behind.
It's the behind shots, because they couldn't afford to obviously reshoot them and rebuild the nest or whatever stage they were at. But it's just. But you're never going to notice, are you? It's not
Cindy says no one talks about the cat. Is it Jinx the cat? What's he called? Jonesy is the cat. What happened to Jonesy?
Here's my point. The cat is not called Jonesy. The cat is called Jones. It's on the manifest in the film. Everyone refers to it as Jones, apart from Harry Dean Stanton when he's looking for it. And he does that thing where he goes, Jonesy. He just adds the Y. It's called someone called Smith being called Smithy. Yet subsequently, everybody calls it Jonesy because they remember that scene. And there was all of the T-shirts, and it just drives me mad because that cat is actually called Jones.
Well, I was going to say for Cindy, though, Cindy says, "Where is the cat?" Well, she said to him, "You little shit, you're staying here."
Yeah, he's in the cattery back on in the space station.
Yeah,
wondering
for a long time.
Yeah.
How quick? Mad Matt says, "How quickly do the aliens build a nest? Do we follow the timeline? There was no interaction with the colonists until after Ripley was recovered."
It's I suppose from the point you have to run it from the point where the family go out and
That's
find
right.
the derelict. That point through to now, they build it pretty quickly, don't they? It's a 3-week journey out there, so they've done it in about a month, really, haven't they?
It might be a month, couple of weeks. It's going to be between a month. I'd say it's between 3 and 6 weeks. We'll call it, because they said they lost contact with the colonies for a period of time, so maybe that's where they were starting.
They may still be building the nest at that stage. They're very quick builders. They're like termites. They can just knock these things together very quickly.
Well, that is an interesting point you actually raised next. They are supposed to be like insects, so they are like ants or termites or wasps, where they build a nest, and as we see, there will be a queen later on. Big shock if anyone didn't know. So we've got another question from Ian Quixote in the chat for you, Ian, which is, one thing that really struck me in Aliens lore was how Cameron had pushed the British crew to the edge of striking, and it was Sigourney Weaver appealing to the crew and a Cameron apology that saved the production. The crew wanted to see the film succeed for Sigourney thereafter. Do you have any more detail on this?
I don't think that's particularly true. I'm sure she probably did a lot of kind of calm things down between as things got tense. But there is the kind of from the point where they fired the first AD, which is only 2 or 3 weeks into production, things calmed down in terms of Cameron's authority, because they started to get scared they would get fired. Right. And that's when I think the authority. The other thing is, Gordon Carroll is on set as the producer. There are people around who are probably fighting his corner, and there's no way you can make this film without being in charge.
Yeah.
The crew griped a lot, and he didn't get on with him and thought, he was this Canadian punk kid. Certainly, I don't know if they came to striking. I think these things have been sort of amplified over time. Mythologized, shall we say?
I think what a lot of people need to appreciate is, particularly the non-British amongst us, entities in the UK in that era, spilling out from the 70s to the 80s, particularly the automotive industry, and then with crews where they were unionized, they got a little bit big for their boots, a lot of them did back then, and thought they were calling the shots without, I'm not going to go into all of it, but that's what crippled a lot of like the British industries back then, where the unions were calling a bit much, and Cameron wasn't used to working with that mentality.
Well, no, because and the rules of the British studios was they provided the crew.
Yeah,
and they were kind of they already belonged to Pinewood. They'd all worked on the Bond films and all the things that they'd done. And the directors came in, whereas he just wanted his own crew. He wanted the guys he worked with on Terminator, but he couldn't do that. So he had to sort of get given this crew, and they didn't see eye to eye. It was
no.
But he likes battles. None of his films are smooth.
No. I mean,
he needs that to sort of feed off, the struggle.
I don't think there's a Cameron film where there hasn't been some insane drama. I mean, I think you probably know this one. Even the rap party for Titanic was insane. I don't know if you know this story, where someone laced the clam chowder at the after party.
It's not the after party. It's it was actually during the shoot of the Canadian element. When they were doing the Bill Paxton bits. Yeah. And again, he'd fired his DP, and there was a lot of upset with the local crews. And somebody laced the chowder with PCP. And I think it's a prank. They weren't. I mean, the story was they were being poisoned, but they all went down. There was vomiting, mass vomiting. Yeah. Cameron ended up in hospital making himself vomit because he's James Cameron, and red-eyed like a Terminator. I mean, it's an absolute devastation. It was quite awful in terms of illness. Yeah. But they did get it under control and get them back. They hadn't even got to Mexico yet. They hadn't got to their boat yet. And that craziness was going on. They never found the culprit.
No.
Someone is out there. Maybe it's one of the people listening in tonight. Did you lace the chowder with PCP?
with PCP, yeah. Well, that's possibly why the Avatar films are so CGI based. It doesn't have as many crew to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, random factors. I think that's why he can control everything.
Yes.
Without having to argue with people.
Got a comment here from Carla saying, can we appreciate the visuals in this ambush scene? Guns going off, flamethrowers, lights from weapons, first-person POV.
Oh, yeah.
It is just fantastic.
The editing of the sequence is absolutely magnificent. You think, I mean, and I love this idea of cutting between action and the screens and the flat lines going on, because it's just visual communication, storytelling with visuals and images. So I mean, the dialogue doesn't make any, apart from Scrawny Weaver, the dialogue's chaos. They're all shouting at each other, and it's just mayhem. But the narrative is actually quite simple. They're dying, they've been killed off one by one, and you're seeing the names, you're seeing which ones are dying. And then it's
great. And I really like the fact they're using sort of the heart monitors, the vital statistics, rather than necessarily showing every one of them dying, because as soon as that's there, they're dead.
Absolutely. Brilliant efficiency in terms of you don't have to do corpses. You're coming to this is the key moment for me, is the point, it's Ripley takes charge. This is kind of what makes the whole franchise work, is that you have to have the moment where Ripley takes charge. She does it in Alien, and she does it in here. And it's almost a poetic moment where Cameron assembles. It's just about now. So Gorman has completely lost control.
Yes. Well, you can see he's dripping with sweat compared to everyone else in the APC.
And she is now doing that thing where that's the key moment where she switches into taking charge. And get them out, and then it just this is when the movie sort of changes gear, almost literally, because she starts to drive the thing.
But the thing about Burke is, if you look, Burke is in the background. He's quite a pantomime villain in some ways. He's just sat there, and you can kind of see he's basically stroking. He's
all metaphorically,
he's metaphorically just stroking his beard.
You had your chance.
He's working his play out constantly.
This is the moment, isn't she?
Yeah.
Lock you in, and then, of course, she can drive it. Yeah, she knows what.
She can drive anything, can't? Yeah. Well, she can kind of drive anything.
Yeah. So the music kicks in. So, as I was saying, it's a musical. This is when the musical number kicks in.
This is actually quite interesting, because this is very different from James Horner's scores. A lot of them tend to be quite similar.
Yeah,
but this one is very different.
martial, isn't it? The kind of snare drums and okay. Obviously, you can see the model work now. If you're watching closely, you can see the cuts between the full size one and the model ones, and it still looks great.
It really does.
These are the things that upset Cameron. You can see he knows you can model one to, but I'll say you're there. You're so in the storyline that you don't care.
I suppose if Cameron was making this 10 years later, when he had a bit more power, it would have been a full-size model used in a custom-built tunnel the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, it done all sorts of sort of bells and whistles with it.
But of course, this facility we're seeing here was used for Axis Chemicals in Batman a few years later, wasn't it?
Yes, it's Acton Power Station, isn't it? I mean, the myth was it was Battersea Power Station. It wasn't. It was Acton Power Station. Yeah. There was loads of asbestos still in it. And it was kind of a real health risk, but it was the 1980s, so everyone overlooked that. And it's one of those things. Although it's not an exterior in terms of the plot and the thing. It's the only real exterior non-studio location until unless you include the assembly cut of Alien 3 when we get the beach scene. There's the beach scene. Everything else is studio based in the Alien franchise. There's not an exterior, there's not a location shot apart from Acton Power Station and the beach scene in Alien 3. It's all studio apart from that. Planets, surfaces, everything. Yeah, so it's all done in studios. Which again is what's wrong with Prometheus in a way, because it's all like Iceland and and you've lost the kind of claustrophobia of it and that feeling of being contained in these worlds.
We've got a question. We've got a question from Damien here. Can you settle this? But I don't think you can.
We probably can.
I don't know if we can here. Basically, can you help settle a long-standing argument? What does Hicks say? I've heard it both ways and even seen subtitles with different versions. Does he say Drake, we are leaving, or Marines, we are leaving?
I think it's Marines.
I think so.
Because he's taking charge, isn't he? He's not just Drake he wants to have. He wants the whole lot. And then it's the great pause. We are leaving. He's got a nice emphasis on the line, doesn't he? And it's become one of those great lines. I think it's Marines, but
I'd go with Marines. We'll say that
again. Someone might be able to listen to it. And again, might be a sound edit thing. There might be a cut with one line and another line, and it just
exactly. It could be. So I've got another question here from Alien, aka Anthony. I have one more question for Ian. Do you believe the Alien's phenomenal success has to do with the iconic xenomorph design? How crucial is the creature design in a film which plays the main antagonist? If the creature was different, could this be a factor to affect the success of the film?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's very. I mean, it's almost integral. I mean, it begins with Alien and Giga and Scott seeing the design, because Scott was terrified. Above all, the one thing that terrified him more than anything else in Alien was the creature would look silly. Yeah. It would be tentacles, it would be Star Trek. And they did all these incredible tests on different things. They had acrobats in suits. They had all sorts of things they tried out, and children in suits, everything. He just despaired. And that was the very famous story. Dan O'Bannon sat him down and opened an Necronomicon and said, look at this. And Scott looked at it. And Scott's a very, very visual guy. I mean, he looks at paintings. He's an artist. He paints some oils. And he studied at the Royal Academy of Arts, with Francis Bacon. And so he looked at this painting and just went, don't change a thing. This is it. I can see it. It's Freudian. I mean, it's all Giga, isn't it? It's dreamlike. And it's in every sense the word alien. It's a concept, a creature that it mind boggles us a bit, although it's humanoid. You just kind of go, what is that? Why is it like that? And then obviously it's become iconic by the times of Aliens. And Cameron removed the hood bit. There's a kind of smooth surface in Aliens, and it's rippled. That's him and Stan Winston sort of changed it a little bit, because again he was more interested in the insectoid nature of it. And less of the kind of Freudian readings go on, because he's not quite that kind of director. But I don't think you have the Alien franchise without that look.
No, I think see it. I think it's not the same film, but I think a big thing that would be proof of how iconic a design has to be to ensure the franchise works and the creature works. Look at the footage of Predator with Jean-Claude Van Damme, with the first version of the Predator that looked like a Power Rangers monster.
Yeah.
Versus what we got, it wouldn't have been the same film. It wouldn't have been the franchise. It wouldn't have been the iconic thing we've had going forwards. And I think the same for Aliens. If they got the design wrong, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, and it's still really important, even now with Aliens, that they don't show you the whole thing.
No,
that you do it in bits, because they only had about 12 suits, I think they made. Of course, he edits and cuts. And you think there are hordes and hordes of them, but it's just editing, trickery. Any one sequence has probably only got a maximum of 4 in or 5. And and they were very brief because they couldn't move very fast, the stuntmen in them. And but again, it's the skill. It's the Jaws principle, and the Alien principle is that the less you see of them, the more you extrapolate in your head.
Exactly. So we see this now. I can't authorize to blow up this expensive thing, even though people may die.
They can bill me.
Yeah,
it's great. It's a great Hicks moment, isn't it? He does a lovely pause. It begins the kind of pseudo romance, or the ersatz, nearly romance between Hicks and Ripley.
There's a bit of tension between them in certain parts.
And they start their kind of like, and it's as we've come to, it's a very Cameron idea, is that you form families. All these films create the nuclear family. So if you think about Terminator 2, it's the Terminator as father, Sarah as mother with the child. He creates families, and the end of this is it's Newt, Hicks, and Ripley. It's with Bishop as some kind of weird uncle figure, but he's like it's creation of the nuclear family, and very universal ideas. You wonder why Cameron is quite as popular as he is, and his popularity isn't talked about enough. He's one of the most important cultural figures of the 20th and 21st century in terms of audience numbers. And it's because he taps into very simple but primal things: the family unit, motherhood. Absolutely, all his films are kind of survival stories from a human perspective. So romance. Once you get to Titanic, it's romance, but it's done in the medium of survival.
Yeah.
So he taps into primal instincts, and we all understand them. Yeah, we all
Yeah.
get them. And Scott does these kind of highfalutin things in Creation and God and Stanley Kubrick and all the kind of things he wants to throw into Prometheus. But Aliens actually is very simple in terms of what its emotional drive is. You know, are we going to stay alive and survive this thing? And then, of course, the motherhood thing kicks in and defines the end of it. But that's, I think, Cameron's genius. His fundamental genius. He taps into something we all get. And it's, it goes back to Halloween and the films inspired in the horror genre things about, that's what you tap into. Terminator is just a slasher movie, really. But the principles that are going on within it are so fantastic. And
they really are. But I mean, again, every one of his films is so slightly different. I think this is probably my favorite Cameron film. I think this is such a wonderful film because it's one of the ones with the largest kind of cast, I would say. Probably.
Yes, you get the ensemble, don't you? I really love Terminator 2, and watching them again recently, as I said, from doing the book, that one really jumped out. It's an extraordinary piece of filmmaking, Terminator.
Terminator 2 is better than the Terminator. It's an unusual case that a sequel is better.
In terms, I mean, it's what Aliens to Alien is kind of Terminator 2 to Terminator in a way. And thankfully, we don't have to divide them up. We get them both, and we can live happily with them both. But I think Terminator 2, is as good as Aliens in terms of it's a very different film. Obviously, it's science fiction and it's James Cameron full of action. So I don't really divide them. In fact, I as I get older, increasingly less like doing best ofs.
No, I agree with you.
I know people do it, and the debate will go on. I'm sure we'll get into it. Is Alien better than Aliens, or Aliens better than Alien? There are arguments for both ways, but in the end, I get to have them both. And
you do, and I think what's wonderful is they do encroach into certain genres more than the others. I would say Alien is more of a straight horror film than this one, especially more psychological. This is an action horror film. Yeah, absolutely. It's true. And then they play to each director's strengths. Scott's atmosphere and a kind of leanness. And with Cameron, it's kind of momentum, escalation. He's a genius at escalation. You take the situation and you just make it worse. You keep making it worse. You think, can it get any worse? And Cameron goes, oh, yes, it can get worse. And he just keeps doing it. It's an element of this being almost a disaster movie in the way that Titanic is almost. Yes. Yeah. Because it's this, like you say, the situation just carries on getting. It's like how much more crap can things get? And we're about to see in a moment that they've lost the dropship. They've lost the dropship, so they can't get off the planet. Yeah, and now the base is going to explode. Now they're going to realise the nuclear reactor, which is a very Cameron thing, because all nuclear things go off in Cameron films. It's going to get worse. They're going to put a clock on it. Again, very. It reminds me of. The film Speed. There's a very funny line in it from Sandra Bullock's character where he gets back onto the bus and she says, "Why are you covered in petrol?" And he goes, "Oh, the bus is now leaking fuel." She goes, "Oh, you felt you needed another challenge." And it's that kind of thing. It's they've got creatures that are going to kill them. They've lost most of the team. They've hardly got any equipment. They're trying to get a ship back because they've got no way to get back to the vehicle, and now they've got a stopwatch running against them. Yeah, because the whole place is going to blow up. Yeah. But again, this was something that was completely lifted from Deep Star into Deep Star 6. Deep Star 6, towards the end of the film, they have a nuclear reactor that's about to go critical. Right. So they just sinker stole the whole thing. Oh, pretty much. I think Cameron sort of, he doesn't like it, the model work so much. I think it still looks good. I think it does. Film. Yeah, I don't get as worked up with people about special effects dating. No. Because I think you're just in the story, and it doesn't matter to me. I mean, the computer details are very old-fashioned, but I suppose for 1986 that was blinding. When we saw it, we're like, oh man, the future. Oh, it was, but it's very very industrial looking, because it looks very similar to Blade Runner, that kind of real futuristic kind of look to it, and I'm quite familiar with it. In my distant dark past, I worked at the steelworks in Port Talbot, so I'm very familiar with this kind of industrial look. Yeah. Of course, Ridley Scott based most of what he does on the Hartlepool steelworks, because he used to go to college
in Hartlepool, and his journey to college every day took him past the steelworks. And it was during the winter, it would be lit up against the dark sky. And he said that was Blade Runner, basically. The Hartlepool steelworks, going from that kind of the industrial aesthetic.
It really is. And it's influenced so much of the sci-fi. Even this, I mean, that's one of the great things about this, that it is Cameron's own thing, but it has kept enough of the Ridley Scott aesthetic to look. It's not like they've gone, it's going to look one way here, and now it's going to be all bright pastel colours and different.
I mean, he was hugely influenced by Alien, regardless of doing the sequel. In fact, the reason he wanted to do the sequel was because he loved the original so much. It was holy ground for him. But it enormously important film, in terms of what he was doing with Roger Corman. The signal films for him are 2001, Star Wars, Mad Max 2, Halloween, and Alien. You add them all together and you get James Cameron's aesthetic. They are the key ingredients. Lots of other films, of course, he loved, but they are the light bulb films, he calls them, that sort of absolutely influenced what he was.
And we're seeing the first part of one of the scenes that everyone really, one of the most probably the most famous. We've seen the first half of the most famous deleted scene in the special that was re-added for the special edition just now, with the setting up of the sentry guns. The
sentry guns, yes.
We've just seen the first half of them.
Yeah, and
we haven't.
He was a gunhead, Cameron. Still is. I don't know if he still is. He may be. But during the writing of the screenplay, during that period when he was writing all these screenplays together, he and Michael Biehn would go to gun rages, to blow off steam. They would just go and do it. He just got obsessed with guns and military hardware, even though he was a peacenik, Cameron. He just loved guns. So all that comes from him and his love of.
So Carl has asked a question. I'm going to stop you on part of the answer because I want to discuss it when they come in later. I'm going to ask you the first half of the question now, which is, why do you think they removed the sentry guns from the film? And the second half of the question, which we'll answer later, is it better with them added back into the film? And then we'll discuss that further in the film. But why do you think they removed them?
I think it's pace, and just to get the edit down, and they don't really narratively do a huge amount. They're kind of cool, and obviously they do wipe out a lot of aliens, but really it doesn't move the story on. And if you're trying to get an edit down, and the post-production was under a lot of pressure, I think he just took them out because they came out very easily, and the story just slotted together fine. You didn't miss them, and having them back in didn't change things particularly. So I think it's as simple as that.
I think as well, it's what people need to appreciate is that this was the 80s, where the era of the multiplex rising, whereby the cinemas were very much a factory. They wanted a fresh set of bums on seats every Saturday night, every 90 minutes, or as close to 90 minutes as possible.
So they would. So, and there was a thinking, that in the States, films can go on too long, and it's also one of the ways that studios control their directors. And he was still a very young director. Fox would have been leaning on him, going too long.
Exactly, because you've got to remember that. I'm preaching to choir, speaking to you about this, but for the audience here, a film is a product, as same as any product. It's got to be manufactured for the market. And what the studio is saying to James Cameron is, we want you to make this product for the market, so we can sell it to our customer, the cinema, so they can sell it to the public. So it's got to fit our criteria as best as possible. So that's where a lot of the pressure comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get marketing departments, and we can't sell this and that, and it's a very complicated procedure, and directors are railing against it. I mean, Cameron still didn't have the power, that he would later gain. So he had to fight a lot of battles. And I think sometimes I also think he probably would have seen it was going too long. He's not stupid, obviously, but I think he does respond to notes from studios, and they went, you got to quicken it. In fact, the whole second half is so pacey that he probably thought, actually, they can come out. We get a move on, so you get that momentum. does it slow it down a bit?
Exactly. I mean, we've got a couple of questions here from the chat for you as well. We've got Ian, again, another question for you from our Ian here, which is, your book Alien Vault is a wonderful collection of tactile artifacts, inserts, etc. I love having it as it makes the alien film history a living thing. Do you have a single item from your work on these films, such as a prop, script, photo, etc., in your personal collection that you cherish?
No, I don't, sadly. Obviously, doing Alien Vault, I came, we wrote the book years after the film was made, and we worked with the Fox archive, and so that's where all those things came from. It's a huge archive. Well, it's at Disney now, but it was at Fox at the time I wrote the book, and a lot of it was, even then, was digitized, and so I looked at a lot of it on screens, and I wasn't allowed to go in and touch things particularly. Which is sad. The BFI have got a lot of stuff, actually, original call sheets and those kind of things. So I've got nothing. I've got bits and pieces from Lord of the Rings. I've got some original call sheets. I've got coins, gold coins that they made for it, and so a few bits and pieces, because obviously I was out in New Zealand and doing a lot, but sadly not with Fox. I don't know. We did plan to do an Aliens Vault at one point, a few years after Alien Vault was very successful, and we ran into trouble simply because of picture rights. At that point, they couldn't quite solve all the Marines picture rights issues, and the cost of it was getting too expensive. And that's kind of and I know that there's been the Rinsler book since, and they've sort of solved those problems since. But at the time, we were preparing to do. I'd written an opening chapter and all about when Cameron pitched it, all those stories about the flips, all that, it was in my opening chapter, which I've used elsewhere quite productively. But yeah, sad I didn't get to. I really wanted to do the Aliens Vault, and thought to have them as companion things, but I did Terminator Vault instead.
Well, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. So another question here as well. Did you actually ever go to the Alien Experience in London?
I did. I did, absolutely.
And can you tell us about that?
Well, it was in the Trocadero, which is in Piccadilly Circus, London, and it was Trocadero is an old cinema years ago, but it's been converted into various times into a kind of giant arcade, basically. And for a brief period, in the sort of cellars of the Trocadero, they built this Alien Experience, where you went along and you basically ran through an aliens like set, a whole sort of constructed set, with these out of work actors dressed as Marines, and every so often a door would open and an alien would be there, sort of like doing gestures, but you never got very close to it. The Marines were always between you and the alien, for obvious sort of security reasons. There was a myth going around that it all went wrong one afternoon when some guy punched an alien because he got so carried away. I don't know. When I did it, I went with a friend who was somebody to come from work, and he brought his briefcase with him from work. And every time, and he had to sort of dash down corridors, and his Marines are going, run, run. It's quite scary. The Marines were quite shouty. And I just kept picturing my mate running ahead of me with his briefcase. It kind of just killed the moment for me. Yeah, I'm not in this world. But it was quite effective. It kind of fell apart because it all got flooded. They had a kind of terrible rains, and it all ruined the sets, and they never rebuilt it. But I did do the Alien Experience. Wow.
Now I've got a question for you from myself here, which is: do you think Aliens should get a 4K restoration?
There's been a lot of talk about this, and Cameron is very slow at doing them. He's, I think, partly because he's so obsessively involved with the Avatar sequels, and he's very hands-on, as you'd want him to be. So it's taking forever. I think he's worried about the things that he doesn't like in it being blown up. So the matte work and the model work.
Will some of that stand up to 4K is the question.
And I've watched quite a lot of 4K. I got myself a 4K TV for lockdown, and I've watched quite a lot of kind of 4K stuff, and it's a mixed bag. Some of it looks fabulous, close up. Some faces look brilliant, and the more modern films look great. But some things, it doesn't hold up. And again, you have that kind of thing that we had with the Hobbits and the kind of the high res stuff, and you're looking on the set rather than looking into the world. I quite like the grain. So I'm not particularly holding out for a 4K because I don't know if it's really going to get that much better.
No. So we just saw the second half of the minigun scene, the infamous sentry gun scene. Now I'm going to frame why I think it's a good
Okay.
Good scene, and then your counterpoint will take. My point is, it's very much like Zulu. It frames how dire a situation they are in, because they have heavily armored automatic guns that aren't afraid. They don't miss. They're tracking the aliens, and it's basically exhausts everything the guns have got, pretty much, because the guns are nearly out of ammo, and there's still a formidable force coming at them. So it's very much that sort of, it's the Zulu shot to me. And I think it's quite important that shot could have been left in.
Yeah, I get that. And I think it comes back to the Vietnam parallels as well, which was about the technologically advanced army going out and confronting a very primitive foe and losing, which is Zulu as well. That the weaponry, as advanced as it wasn't up to the guile of the enemy. And I suppose that may have been in Cameron's thinking and writing that scene, that it was about this high-tech military technology wasn't up to the sheer numbers of aliens coming at them. And they'd run out of bullets before they could have any real effect on it. It's a good point, and I'm sure Cameron would agree with you. That's probably why he put it in. But I suppose if you're tightening an edit in basic narrative terms, it comes out quite easily.
It does, yeah. It's. I've got quite a few of the community here. So I'm going to ask the question to our community in Discord, on YouTube, wherever you're joining us. Is the film better with that scene or without? Let's see what our community says.
Okay.
I can actually do a poll on YouTube. Let's see if we can do this.
DC or no DC?
Okay, let's see what happens.
Poor old Bishop sent into the tube.
Yeah. I quite like I do quite like this scene where she hands him a gun and he just hands it straight back because he's realised he's got no interest in.
It's a lovely touch, isn't it? You see, he's so peaceful. He doesn't kill people. He can't. Yeah. I always wonder how they did that shot. They must have had a tube section, and there's obviously the camera coming this way on some kind of extendable arm. The poor old Lance Henriksen literally had to kind of worm his way through the tube. There we are. There's the guns.
This is a great atmospheric shot of him, and it's also the fact that since he's a synthetic, you can see that would be really uncomfortable for a person to be crawling like that for a long period of time. So it's
it didn't look, especially the thought that an alien might be either in front of you or behind you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great, and of course it's kind of a little callback to the ducks in Alien they go into, and so they're kind of, he knows what he's doing, Cameron, in just terms of nods. Which what he lovingly called the prequel. He coined the phrase prequel. I don't know whether he literally coined the phrase prequel, but he kept referring to Alien, this science fiction masterpiece, as the prequel, as he made Aliens. That's pure Cameron for you.
It really is. So we've got the result on the sentry gun scenes. Our Discord community, 100% of the audience on Discord say it's better with the sentry guns. And on YouTube, 92% of the audience are in favour with the sentry guns. So let's go with they're better back in, I think.
Let's keep the sentry guns in. Jim will keep them in. All right.
That's it.
Okay. Hudson is so important. And in terms of being the kind of pressure release valve, and Paxton talked a lot about that there's every danger he'd become whiny, but he was so carefully sort of calibrated between actor and screenplay and obviously director that when he comes in with his one-liners and his gags, it's always at a moment to release the pressure just a little bit. So
he's a great character in that he is the awkward one, but he's never cowardly. No,
he's interesting, isn't he? He's part of the audience as well, isn't he? He's doing the commentary. The audience is thinking, we just got our asses kicked there. He's just saying the obvious.
That's what's great about it. Everyone has. You can almost draw a label on a lot of the characters, saying which role they perform as this kind of the core ensemble we've got now. Unfortunately, Burke being the weaselly coward.
Burke being the weasel, but that's what he's there for.
Yeah.
And of course, now we have the most romantic scene Cameron's ever written, involving the discussion of a rifle.
We go. Scott, another question for you from Sparky John, one of our community. Lance Henriksen has said that he would have quit acting if Aliens had failed. With the roles he had had before, Close Encounters, The Terminator, would this have been a rash decision?
Yeah, very rash decision. I imagine I'm accompanying you being serious about that.
No.
Again, he was relatively early in his career. And I'm sure what he was trying to say was, he felt it was that good. It would have been unthinkable for it to fail. And I understand that. But I think that might have been a bit rash on Lance Henriksen.
Yeah.
And his agent might have argued with that as well. With the good roles to come for Henriksen. It's still working today. Then people see him Falling, the one he made with Viggo Mortensen, about a guy, a sort of cantankerous dad with Alzheimer's. He's fantastic in that. So he's one of those actors who always looks older than his years when he was younger. Yeah. I'm sort of looking at him now. I've got it on. I'm playing it off Blu-ray, but it's on a 4K TV, so it's upscaling slightly. And he looks kind of older in this for an artificial. But that's going to artificials. Ian Holm didn't look like a spring chicken, did he? No. He's such a great character in this, and it's I really Bishop is one of my favorite characters in this film because it is the redemption. I like it's not a redemption piece. That's not really the right term for it. I'd say he proves Ripley wrong. Yes, but in a good way. Yes, she comes to rely on him, and again, it's switching over, flipping what happened in the original. It's just a great sort of great use of the tropes and motifs of the original in a different way, and without getting too obsessed with the idea of is artificial, is he a robot? How does he think or feel? It doesn't matter. The performance that Henriksen gives takes you past that kind of debate. You just go, well, he's just a character. But he has that kind of austere kind of quality that Henriksen has, where he is quite weird. And of course, very famously, I'm sure most of you know this, that Henriksen was the first choice to play the Terminator in the original. And that was the idea that it would be an infiltration unit that would disappear into crowds. But it wouldn't look like Arnie, stood out in every crowd he was in. It would be a much more of a kind of an SAS type creature. And that all got nixed when they found Arnie, and it changed hands. And thankfully, it kept Henriksen in the film. But very early on in that, he was preparing to play the Terminator and working out the psychology of a machine. So I'm wondering whether he took a lot of that thinking he put into Terminator and brought it to Bishop. Quite possibly. Really nice little scene with Newt there. And I don't know if this is something they deliberately put into the writing, but it's something that's happened. It's come out more as we've started to understand mental health with PTSD of soldiers, etc. As Newt clearly has been through a lot of trauma, she can't sleep in the bed. She's having to sleep on a hard floor. And that's quite common with a lot of soldiers who've returned from conflicts abroad, where they've been sleeping on the ground on hard surfaces. They struggle to be comfortable in a relatively safe and secure environment of a bed. Also, obviously, it's a reiteration of the fact that she is like Ripley. She's a mini Ripley. She is a survivor. And you do have these kind of cutaways to her, great character pieces. She knows where to hide, conceal herself, because she's survived without any protection for however long it is, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever she's done. Well, it's less than that. It's probably days, isn't it? But yeah, absolutely. It sort of tells you something about the psychology of what's going on with these characters without explaining it, without having to kind of stop and say it. It's brilliant filmmaking. Just in that image, you create the idea of her character, and she's both capable and terrified. It's just great direction and screenwriting. Well, we can even see here as they're fighting the face hugger. Ripley is trying to keep her safe, but you can see Newt. We see with Newt that Newt is actually even trying to help her fight it. Newt's not just trying to flee. She's got skills. Newt. She knows what she's doing. And that the idea that she is kind of a surrogate daughter, it sort of plays out into a kind of she's like Ripley. She's like Ripley Junior. Ripley Junior, and they have the same characteristics. But starting to show his colours. But
But here we go. Question. This is from Carla. The film was never shown to test audiences because the editing and score were not completed until the week before its theatrical release. Do you think this benefited the film? Avoid making movie by consensus?
Certainly. I mean, who knows what would have happened if they'd seen it. I mean, you'd hope that the test audience would have been completely gripped by it. I mean, we can go back to Alien. There's a very famous story of a test screening Alien. It's one of those kind of legendary, the two legendary test screenings are Jaws and Alien. And there's a very similar effect. And the carnage that was going on in this Dallas cinema while Alien played, and people falling over and passing out, and just chaos, vomiting. No one knew what a chest burster was at that time. You've got to remember. And Ridley Scott sort of been confronted by the Fox hierarchy with these pale, sickened faces going, we don't know if we even can release this film. And Scott just said, no, this is it. This is the energy that works. And they trusted him on that. There were some trims and things made still to it. But he said, that's it. And I think Fox did get it as a studio. They got what the quality of these films was about. And again, studios, they do a lot of sins and they get things wrong. But often they know a good film when they see it. And it's, this works. Let's just get it out there. And, they would have been swept up by this.
Oh, definitely. It's I love this scene. There's something great about this scene. The face hugger just running through the sort of the sprinkler through the rain. Yeah.
And then blowing out the window. And it's his camera at his best, isn't it? This really is character. And it's a confined scene, isn't it? It's a room scene.
We can see Newt We can see Newt, though, is just, she's fighting to try and help as well.
Yeah, she's part of it. And it's the first time we've seen Hudson behave like a proper soldier. It's the first time we've seen him kill something. Yeah, probably something. Oh, yeah, he has got, his military skills.
Yeah. But we're seeing that all the Marines are pulling together, even, even Gorman, who's been asleep for a good chunk of the film.
Gorman is having his redemptive arc now. He's starting to pull it together.
He may not be the best, but he's still pitching in.
Yeah. Oh, and that's now, Burke. And of course, this is, Cameron understood this, the backstory to it all is, and the basis of the story is the bad guy is not the alien, the bad guy is the company. Because
as she says in it, as they say in a second, the aliens aren't screwing each other over for a profit. The aliens aren't. I think you've got to remember, the aliens are not evil. No, they're not good. They're not bad. They're just animals.
Yeah, and that kind of echoes outwards in the sense that the battle between two mothers at the end. In the end, the alien queen has had all her children killed, and all the eggs burnt.
Exactly.
She's got her own, agenda about protecting, her species.
Well, look at it from this point of view. Watch the film. Imagine you were a xenomorph watching the film.
Yes. Yeah.
And it becomes a very different movie. It becomes about your home being invaded by Marines who kill half your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And you fight back and everyone hates you for it,
Yeah. Wow. Apparently at the film's premiere, Paul Reiser's sister physically struck him because his character Burke was so contemptible.
Yes. He's great, isn't he? I mean, Paul Reiser, he was a stand-up comic and he'd done Diner and a few other films. Really good at improvising, Paul Reiser. Genius improviser. So I remember the way he did a lot of that stuff himself and sort of threw it in.
Yeah.
Absolutely gets that. Right, that character. And it's 1985, 86, when they're shooting it and releasing it, caught the yuppie cycle, that idea of the go-getting generation.
Well, it was very close to sort of Wall Street, with the whole greed is good kind of.
Yeah. So now we're absolutely in the grip of.
Again, such an iconic thing. Those motion sensors, how simple but how wonderful.
It's a genius idea, isn't it? They back into the room. and they can't find where they are. And that's just a great. Again, you can, it's imagine screenwriting and cameras in the room would just think that scene through visually, and they would all, as one, look upwards. And he's just thought out the geography of the scene. He's just thought, okay, they come above.
Yeah, you're forgetting you're in a multi-layered structure, but it did show earlier that there were floors above and below from the acid dripping through. So the threads of this were earlier in the film.
Yeah,
for the audience to see.
Yeah, it's there. It's and then it's ceiling, and then they do all this kind of stuff with the sealing of the doors and the, high tension stuff. But it doesn't.
But the false ceilings are still there.
It's in the room, and all that stuff. It's
really is. I always thought these welders were just such a cool little thing. These little handheld welders that the Marines have. Carla's saying, I can't believe they totally overlooked the ceilings.
But it's a brilliant use. I mean, and directors, again, are very bad at it these days. The geography of the scene. So the audience knows where things are and can sense the restriction of the space. And then, of course, the idea of the ceiling. It's kind of, it's absolutely knowing, three dimensions that you're working within as a director. I mean, these days they cut so fast, you can't tell where things are.
No,
actually, the cutting is by modern standards quite sedate in Aliens.
Oh, it is. Can you imagine Michael Bay's Aliens?
Yeah, it would just be a blizzard of images you can't take on board. And
I'd love this. It's just the confusion.
Yeah, it's not reading right. Now she is, of course, Ripley starts to figure it out. Yeah, because Ripley always knows. That's a great. You must have imagined that shot of them all looking upwards. And then, this is fantastic. And this is one of the few times we see the aliens in terms of numbers.
Yeah,
we don't. We see them individually. And this shot, just the what's that, about 7, I think, or 6 or 7.
And they're kind of crawling, aren't they?
Yeah, crawling that upside down. And then they start breaking through. This is Zulu now, isn't it? This is this is the coward.
Sharon saying she'd literally pee her pants in that room. I think a lot of people would, to be honest. Oh, and but do something, Gorman.
Now the music kicking in, brilliant. Yeah. And that's the point where, when he shut the door, that's the point where the guy in my first screen just shouted out, "You bastard!"
But again, that's one of the things that's wonderful about this film. The score, it hasn't got very much music in it, to be honest.
No, it's quite spare, isn't it? But when he uses it, it's really well done.
It's just to accentuate pieces.
It's accelerating quality to it.
It's not like your typical film. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, John Williams is the maestro of film scores.
Yeah,
and he's incredible.
Themes, yeah,
but you don't have a theme. You don't have like a scene where she's disappointed about something and a little bit of music playing at the beginning. It's none of that kind of traditionally scored goes.
And even compared to the Terminators, which actually have quite an eloquent score. I know you have the bum 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 stuff, but there's quite a lot of music going on in the Terminators. Whereas this is quite. Maybe it was a virtue of necessity, because there's so little time to do the score. It was like, check it out, we'll just do these scenes. But it's brilliant. It's
But it's what's great about it. But then, that's a question. I'm going to go to a question I've had from Sparky John, one of our members, which is he saw a clip of the alien actually stinging Gorman in the atmosphere process at his escape scene. The reason he's unconscious, it's in the book.
Well, then there's a bit where he's cocooned, isn't there? It's on. You can find it on YouTube. It's a cut scene. It's on one of the Blu-ray releases. And I mean, we haven't got to it yet, but it's when she goes back down to rescue Newt. Yeah. She finds
Burke, isn't it?
Yeah, Burke. Cocooned.
She gives him a grenade and then walks off.
Yeah. And he's like, I can feel it moving inside me. There's that kind of stuff. So now, of course, they've got to head into narrower confines. However big the corridor, you've got to find a smaller place to crawl through to get it more and more claustrophobic, more and more tense.
Exactly. But it is great where they're just doing this, but you can see the Marines are they are real here. There's not a cowardly Marine in this, which is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're a good fighting unit, except they're overwhelmed. They know what they're doing. They're Cameron creations. They're good at their jobs. But
right. So no, apparently the question is,
sorry.
There was I've just been messaged again. Apparently it's not Burke. There is actually a clip, apparently somewhere, of an alien stinging Gorman in the atmosphere processing escape scene, and that's the reason he's unconscious. Apparently it's in the book.
Okay.
But he thinks he saw a clip, but has never seen it since. I thought it was.
I thought it was. Thing falls in his head, doesn't it?
I thought he bumped his head in the
in the armored carrier. They kind of crashed, and then the baggage was. I mean, obviously Alan Dean Foster did the novelization, didn't he? And they write those very early, and they often do it from earlier drafts of the screenplay. That's why often there's differences.
Quite possibly, there's a bit of difference in it.
There's some ideas that got dropped. At some point.
Exactly. Occasionally, they can be better than the movie. Some of those novelizations, certain stuff can be better. But here we go. So, Atta Prime says, I was too young to see Aliens at the time and only caught this part in the events on TV sometimes later. For years, I thought the whole film was in a space station that looked like this. No, it's. I'll forgive you for thinking it would be a space station for the whole thing, because it is very space station-like.
Yes, yeah, and obviously it looks like the Nostromo, and it's a spacecraft. It has that kind of quality to it, which is obviously the aesthetic of the franchise.
But I think that's one of the genius of the budget. Obviously, I think there was a considered choice to put them in an atmosphere processor to give them to go back to the planet, but still have a space station type mentality, so they didn't have to have the sprawling sets of a whole planet.
Yeah, and industrial again. It's Cameron. It's obviously very based on Ridley Scott, but Cameron had done a whole factory sequence in the Terminator. Yeah, he'd had all that kind of stuff in his armory, and he loves that. I mean, you go from this to the Abyss, and the inside of the drilling rig, it looks like it's in Aliens, and then the big forge at the end of Terminator 2. Looks like it's Aliens. It's the Cameron thing. He likes factories. He
does, the industrial kind of look. So we've got a thing from Carla here as well. When filming the scene with Newt in the duct, Carrie Henn kept deliberately blowing her scene so she could slide down the vent, which she later called a slide 3 stories tall. James Cameron finally dissuaded her.
As you're saying, it's yes. I think she enjoyed that, doing so much that he got a bit tired of her always going down the slide. He said, "We've got to get the scene done." Then he let her play afterwards. I think she just stayed on it. I mean, she was interesting. One of my great victories at Empire, you see this column. Where are they now? Yeah, where she found people who sort of did one role or disappeared, and the two we always wanted to get were Newt and Damien from The Omen. Okay. I got them both. When I was looking after I got them both. And actually, it was old-fashioned days. It's almost pre-internet. And I think I ended up getting an address from a casting agent. Said she doesn't act anymore, and she'd moved back to America. She was a
teacher now, isn't she? Yeah,
she's a teacher. At the time I interviewed her, I don't know if she was yet, but she was a military-based baby, and that's how they found her and put her in the film. So she was staying in the UK, and actually I sent a letter. I got given this address, isn't it? And I got to the office one morning, and my phone rang, and it was Carrie Henn on the other end going, "I got your letter." It's been so many years, and she hadn't been, because at that point there weren't the conventions and all the things she's done since. And I was a bit like, "Wait there!" I had to get my kind of tape recorders together. Don't go anywhere. People come in the office, are going, "Shh, Newt's on the phone." And she was lovely. She was very funny and had great stories about hanging out with them all. And she talked a lot about, and one of the questions I asked was, did you realize how shocking the film was? I mean, you were a kid, how gory. And she said, actually, the Cameron himself worked very hard not to have her around when they were doing very violent moments. Obviously, there was things she saw and she partook in. But he was quite, conscious of keeping it light and easy for her. And things like the slides and the things that
exactly, because I mean, she's not in it a massive amount, but also what I think a lot of people need to appreciate is when you're filming in the UK using kids, especially back then, there were very strict rules about how long a child could be on set for.
Absolutely. He had to go off and have school lessons and all those things, like 3 hours a day. I think they could shoot something like that. Someone might know. So Newts used, in limited amounts. Obviously, she gets more important as the film goes on, but in some ways, she's not around that much. She gets kidnapped by the aliens and gets taken down to the nest. So she's absent again, but she's always conscious in our minds. It's kind of, again, what's good about screenwriting. Because she's become the thing that's driving Ripley. She's become her.
Well, she's the surrogate daughter. She's feeling the loss of her. It's possibly compounding the loss of her daughter. She's a surrogate daughter to her. She's got another question from the community here, and it's again from Sparky John, who's one of our super fans. He's a big fan of the music of James Horner. Do you have any particular favourite James Horner scores, or?
I kind of think I'm not great on scores. I do quite like Titanic. Again, it's one of the films I watched again to do my book, and it improved so much from my memory. I didn't love it when I first saw it. I thought it was.
I actually rewatched it recently, and I thought it was still a great film. It's got
I was surprised how good it was. Just the construction of that film is terrific. It's Cameron; he's so brilliant at the kind of the construction of films, their overall architecture. But I just thought, that the last bit of it, and he developed all those themes at the beginning of the film. It's all romantic and period piecey, and then when it just goes, it goes, and you're just kind of in the moment like you are with Aliens. And I just thought, actually, that Horner score does a lot of work in Titanic of sort of placing you in a context and creating the romance, because Cameron has said is like, the film's absurd. You've got to get them from having met each other for the first time to the point where they're meant for one another, like the most bonded couple, in the whole of the world. They're nothing but trying to save each other. You've got to do that within like 24 hours, whatever it is, 48 hours. And no relationship has ever worked like that.
No. But if I could wave a magic wand, Titanic is a film. If I could wave a magic wand in the cinemas, I would like the last half hour of Titanic remastered into IMAX 3D.
Yeah, that would be quite impressive, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that would be in the biggest IMAX screen with the ship lifting up in the air, that kind of stuff. That would be incredible.
I prefer the heavy metal Cameron, but I greatly admired Titanic when I looked at it again.
I always felt this scene with Ripley could use a bit of montage music or something, but I'm glad it doesn't.
Well, the commandos bit where she
exactly, where she's getting everything ready,
sellotaping the gun together, and it's great. It's a Rambo reference, I think.
It is.
Originally, and maybe he wrote both scenes at the same time. Maybe he had Rambo, one kind of typewriter, arming up over there, and he was doing, I'll have Ripley arming up as well over here. Why not?
But it's great, and this is what's really good here. We see a little bit of Ripley's mistrust of Bishop again here, where she says, "Don't let him leave," and Hicks says, "Of course, I won't." But then later on, he appears he has. But anyway,
it's a double bluff, isn't it? It's a nice. It's kind of almost Bishop's big moment where he proves his worth. And when you think, oh God, he's done the worst to us, Cameron. He's made it. He's stranded them. What now? But it's a lovely
exactly. Exactly. So they're really down to the nitty gritty. There's two. Well,
it's the nuclear family. It's mother and father with weird uncle, and it's going down. Now mother going to join her daughter in the Christmas grotto, with all the decorations, and to bring her daughter home. But it's the Dantean moment, isn't it? It's a descent into hell. It's just. Again, it's very similar with Cameron's third acts tend to do this, but he understands the 3-act structure extremely well. Where else can you take the drama? You've taken as far as you can go with the Marines, and you've got to have Ripley on her own at some point. And it's a fantastic idea. Just the nest and answer the big question: where do the eggs come from?
It is great. It's just wonderful to see Ripley kind of. I think as in some ways as well, Ripley's blaming the xenomorphs for the loss of her real daughter because the events of that kept her in hypersleep so long. So the whole she missed out on her her daughter's life and death. So it's compounding her hatred for the aliens. So she's all she wants is alien genocide as far as she's concerned right now.
Yeah, and obviously those things are sort of reiterated a bit in Alien 3 when she says, I've known you all my life. It feels like I've known you all my life. I don't know anything else. And that's kind of, I think there's a lot of good stuff in Alien 3. That's almost her existential despair by that point. All I know is the alien.
What I was going to say, what's quite interesting is I'd like to know if someone could work out how long Ripley's life actually is between the events of Alien and her death in Alien 3.
Well, if you add all the hypersleep into
if you cut all the hypersleeps out, how long is her life in reality between that? I would imagine it's not more than a couple of months of...
Yeah, well, Alien must be, I've not done the timing, but must be about 24 hours. And this can't be much more. I mean, there's a bit of stuff at the beginning, isn't there? When they've got Newt and they're tidying Newt up, and they've sort of established a base camp. So you think there's a bit of concertining of time there. So say, I don't know, 3 days maybe, and they go to sleep at one point. Then it's a bit
couple
longer.
Of days in Alien 3.
Alien 3. She'd been there a bit longer because she's in the hospital for a bit, and then, but not longer than a week.
No.
And then of course she's not in Alien Resurrection because that's a completely different character. Not completely different, but you know what I mean. Yeah. So because she dies. It's been a couple of weeks tops.
Yeah. So the aliens have pulled her life apart fairly quickly. You've got to remember, from her point of view, all this alien stuff, even though it is 54 years, I think she's supposed to be in hypersleep for, or between the films, for her, realistically, she's just been on this roller coaster ride of hell for maybe, at best, if we say she was on Earth for maybe a couple of weeks before
there's that
being
stuff
shipped
there,
back out again.
Job. Maybe
she's at best, she's maybe lived 8 weeks of her life since all the stuff that happened in Alien.
She must be so knackered. How exhausted are you? You've not had a good night's sleep in 8 weeks.
Well, exactly. But you can imagine, though, as well, it's just destroying her as she's going along because it's just this constant thing.
Yeah. But it's also about her resilience, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the writer, David Thompson, who's very good on the Alien cycle, a great film critic, he says that the film should be called Ripley. They shouldn't be called Alien because it's not their story, it's her story. And that's what you follow. The aliens are almost incidental, or they're kind of a MacGuffin that drives it along. But it's all about her. It's the story of Ripley. And if you look at it, that's actually what it is. It really is. It's the story of Ripley.
And is that why Alien versus Predator, Prometheus, Alien Covenant don't particularly work? Because they tried to emulate Ripley.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it right.
No, and it becomes so obvious, doesn't it? It's kind of, we're doing a kind of replacement version of her. And you think, well, you're the same moves, but you're making it artificial, because obviously you're ripping off yourself.
Especially the character in Alien Covenant, that was blatant.
Catherine
Ripley.
Waterston's character,
yeah.
And she's a great actress, Catherine Waterston. But and they made it look like her, didn't they, with what she was wearing, and it becomes slightly absurd. Bring her back. Just bring her back. Do another sequel. Just bring her back. It was that simple. So just makes you sort of kill all the...
I do like. I've got the subtitles on at the moment with news, and it just says "Screaming continues."
She's going Ripley. She's going Ripley, isn't she? She's not. She's quite bold, isn't she?
I'll give Newt a pass on the screaming, to be fair, because I think I'd be screaming probably more.
She
than
does
her.
a great scream in the facehugger scene, doesn't she? She's that shot with the facehugger coming with the back of her, and she just screams. It's a brilliant kind of frontal shot, kind of close up. Brilliant. So now everything's blowing up.
It's great to see this. This is just it makes you wonder as well about health and safety then versus now. There's so much fire near to the main cast.
There was.
If they'd get away with it now.
I don't know. I mean, there obviously would have been some safety precautions, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they're running a risk. I mean, they use flamethrowers. I mean, look, she's got flame out the front of her gun. That's not a CG shot. That's there. So they had to be careful with what they were doing. Meeting the Queen. Now we know where the eggs come from.
Oh, well, Par Mimic says, given that Newt had survived for months at Hadley's Hope earlier by crawling around the air decks, wouldn't she have avoided capture by the Xenomorphs if Ripley hadn't held her back earlier? No, because I think Newt would have been living on borrowed time, and it was eventually the aliens would have caught her.
Plus, she, because she's now sort of become, de-wilded, as it were. She's been brought back in from the wild and rehumanized.
Yeah.
She's picked up the weaknesses of the group as well. She's starting to think she's going to be all right. Because Ripley's there. She's got a mother figure back. That's made her weak. That's if she'd been on her own, she wouldn't have made the mistake. But because
this is a wonderful scene.
Yeah,
where we're seeing something new.
Yeah. There it is, the Stan Winston creation. Yeah. It's a great the close-up of Sigourney Weaver and Carrie Henn's fantastic, isn't it? It's just so iconic image
really is
of those two.
It really is. And what I don't want, what I want to know in my mind, but also I don't want to know, I don't want it explaining to me, is that if there is an alien and then there's no alien, very much like with a bee, where a bee can consume royal jelly and become a queen.
Yes.
In my mind, I want to know what the process is about how an alien becomes a queen. If there is an
because she's got a queen inside her in Alien 3, hasn't she?
But is it due to if there's no queen in the hive or whatever in the vicinity?
Yeah, I don't know. They're trying to start a new nest kind of thing. That's why the alien won't kill her in Alien 3. And
I don't want to know the answer.
Because we don't know how she gets impregnated. We don't know how something happened. It's a face
in Alien 3 there was a face that got in her pod.
Yeah, but we don't know how it got there, do we? We don't know how the egg got put on. It's because the queen's sack is gone by the time the queen tests itself.
It's hinted in the game Aliens Colonial Marines, unfortunately, which is dreadful, but apparently is canon. You see in the docking bay of the Sulaco she dropped a load of alien eggs.
Right. But when did she do that? I mean,
I don't.
Because in the time I filmed, that doesn't scan.
No, I know, but
the queen only gets on the dropship once she's got rid of the sack.
Yes.
And so she so there wasn't time to lay an egg on the dropship or in the Sulaco or anywhere.
No.
During the battle at the end.
I know. That's why this game's so terrible, because it plays dirty with the continuity, that there was a secret thing you didn't know happened.
Yes.
It's one of those.
And of course, Cameron had nothing to do with Alien 3, and he would have figured that out. Yeah, he would have known how it all happened, because as far as he's concerned, it doesn't happen.
Yeah. But this is such a cool scene where she's trying to get Newt out of there, but she doesn't care. She's just everything she's got.
Yeah, destroying the eggs. She's not letting any more live. Yes, it's her kind of her exorcism of the past.
Yeah. This is where it goes beyond just trying to get out of there. There's a moment where Newt says, "Come on, Ripley, let's go,"
and she's
because Ripley's kind of almost enjoying killing them.
Yeah.
We see the Queen ripping the sack off her.
Yeah.
She.
The flares. So, it's all thought through. Get out of the maze.
It's a good idea. She'll have to all the flares to light her way out. So it's quite nice that they obviously went through covering up little plot holes. Like, oh well, how would she know her way out? Because it's all so similar and she's never been there before. She did deliberately.
They sort of do a sense test on it. Yeah, as you're right. And so many films don't do that anymore, I'm sure, because you sit there going, well, how's that happened?
Well, exactly. As I said before. Never seen
that with the Cameron film.
In Prometheus, the guy who has the automatic mapping system and the robots that whiz round and map everything on his arm is the one who suddenly doesn't know his way around something he's mapped earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to Kubrick, because Kubrick wouldn't let a single detail go without being analysed for absolute sense. I think Cameron takes that from Kubrick.
you need that in the day of these days of the internet, unfortunately, where everyone is picking holes and things.
Also, is that so much these days is sort of fixed in post with CGI and things. That,
yeah,
they shoot a scene and we'll figure it out later and what it all means. But Cameron, he just knows ahead what everything's meant to do and how the story works.
Yeah, it's great. I love this scene where she's trying to hold it back with a flamethrower, but even you can see she's starting to run out of ammo. Her flamethrower's nearly out, and she didn't bring that much stuff with her really in the scale of things.
I wonder, they must be cutting between Acton power station stuff and set stuff. I don't know how it divides up really.
Someone's saying, how did the alien queen know how to operate the lift? Well, I'm not going to say that.
One of those things, yeah.
Well, no, what I would say is if I'm going to say that the lift's detected someone going into it and it's in an evacuation mode, so it automatically carries up as someone's gone into it to the exit point.
I could have just got into the lift and banged it. It's so huge, you just bang the button. But yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, or maybe the queen is quite smart and knows how to use the lift. Maybe they're a clever species. I've got cats and they know all sorts of shit.
Exactly.
Yeah, they figure anything out. So
exactly, I'll go with that. I've got a cat, and he's.
So you see the electrical sparks that we see, they're made with what's called a Tesla machine. And the Tesla machine is the same one that Cameron used on Terminator.
Right.
It's wonderful. It's the original one used for Frankenstein. They found it
really?
to make Terminator, and they used the original one and still using it for here.
It's wonderful to see, though. I know CGI can be great and it can be wonderful, but I've got a real passion sometimes for those kind of old effects overlaid and hand painted lightning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think there's something great about it.
They are. Bishop loses worth.
Now, here's the thing. Why didn't Bishop turn the ship and fire the missiles at the Queen now? We were seeing where he could have relatively turned it and fired because they've got the missiles there. But is it because Bishop, with his behavior inhibitor, isn't allowed to hurt anything? Because we never see Bishop actually kill anything or hurt anything.
No, we don't. He's got the Asimov rules, hasn't he? That Cameron wrote in that you can't harm a human. Isn't it because the whole thing is blowing up and the things got tangled up? They simply haven't got time.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it's because he's not able to hurt anything living. Because he gives the gun away, so he doesn't hurt.
Yeah, maybe, but I think they're just going to get them out before the whole thing blows. It's probably the imperative. Here we have.
This is a great scene where it's, and this scene has been copied so many times. The escaping through the exploding.
Yeah.
Oh. Carla wants to know.
Right.
How did the alien queen get on the dropship? Looking at the scale of the dropship, was it big enough for the queen? Why didn't Bishop notice the weight difference? Well, he might not have noticed a weight difference because of all the metal and the feet being caught, and he just thought it was tangled up.
That's the moment, isn't it? When it gets tangled up, you presume that's the moment.
And he's just yanking it, doing whatever to get it free. He's
just got on board at that point.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if they'd even probably thought it through. It's just a surprise that Cameron wants to spring on us. You think it's all fine, but no.
For all we know, she was clung. Well, she was just clung like that on the underside of it.
Yeah, I mean, we know how good they are at surviving, so they're pretty swift. And it's just that idea that there's one more trick in it, and of course it's all foreshadowed, isn't it? Yeah, we're waiting for the power loader suit to come back again.
Okay, so I've got another question from Onzi, one of our community members here for you, Ian. Is there anything you would have liked to have seen done differently or added or removed from this cut of Aliens?
Oh, it's hard. Not a lot, because it works so well. I suppose, you could say some of the matte shots are a little obvious now, and if the technology was available, just in those backdrops with a bit of CG might have improved them. I can't. It's hard to improve on Aliens, or come up with an improvement on Aliens. I don't know really.
I don't think there's anything I could think to improve it as a film.
I wouldn't. No cast member isn't less than perfect, to the role that they're in. We pick up on little details that every film has, but it's. Even though I wouldn't want special effects or filmmaking facility to improve the aliens so we can see them do more, because I like the restraint of that. And there's a scene coming up, isn't it, when the Queen moves? It's a bit daft, isn't it? Like, donk donk donk.
Yeah, but I'll go with it.
But it's so it's maybe you can improve that, but you're nitpicking.
Really, yeah. Now we're seeing the cementing of a trope in the Alien films, which is the alien, the Queen, or whatever it is, being blasted out into space. That we see in
yes, we're coming up to that. It's the only way. It's that idea, in the first film, was that the only way you could kill it really was just by chucking it out, using the harpoon gun and just getting it off the ship, because it was just unkillable. And I suppose again he's doing the callbacks, Cameron, and he's repeating the same idea that finally the only way you know you're safe is by jettisoning the alien into space.
Yeah, but we're seeing the Queen actually is more intelligent here, as you were saying earlier, because she's lifting the grates out of the way. So she's maybe got at least like chimp intelligence or something. The nature she's able to do basic functions of things. But got another question here from Sparky John. Tough one. But
pause.
The scene. This is such a fantastic scene.
We have to pause for that moment.
Oh, we do. We really do.
Which is kind of corny in a way, that line. But when I saw it, even the first time, people cheered.
Yeah.
Because it was a sort of reassertion of motherhood and character, wasn't it? It's like she had the upper hand a bit. After all the desperation, we've been through with them, and they're just clinging on with their fingernails. That's the moment when you suddenly think, no, Ripley's in charge of this moment. The alien Queen is done for because the power loader so it's just great.
It's great, but you can also see that the alien Queen is incredibly strong as well, because she's matching the power loader fairly well.
It's a right old ding dong that's going on, isn't it?
It really is. But the question I had was, that's right, from Sparky John, which is a tough one. What's your favorite James Cameron movie, and what's your favorite Alien movie?
Again, it's like we were talking about earlier. I kind of resist favorites.
I'm not one for tier lists myself.
No, and every day I go on Twitter, someone's going, would you take this one or this one? And they're like, why have I got to choose? Why? What's happening? Are we burning the building? For me, it's with Cameron, I think it's a kind of a bit of a draw between Terminator 2 and Aliens, though I do love Terminator a lot as well. And for different reasons, they give me different things. Obviously, aesthetically, they have similarities, but in a way, the Terminator films are much funnier. But there's a wonderful kind of sort of reorientation of the mythology in Terminator 2 that I love. But Aliens is probably the most gripping film ever made. Between Alien, in terms of my favorite Alien franchise film, I do say Alien, and I know this might shock everyone, because I think in the end it did create it, and it's kind of an extraordinary film, the first one. I think Aliens is a masterpiece, but I think Alien just has this kind of quality to it where it's a bit like a 70s film, and it has this kind of texture that I kind of greatly admire. And it's a haunted film. It's a haunted house film, but it's also a haunted film in a way that Aliens isn't. Aliens is an action movie and a propulsive film, whereas Alien has a strangeness to it that sort of stays with me a bit more. But again, I don't want to make these distinctions. I have them both.
Exactly. Got a great comment here from Aaron Horrocks on YouTube, who's also in our Discord as well. Once you have an alien on the ship, you don't want to shoot it, because if Ripley had got the pulse rifles, etc., because there'll be extra, we know there's extra rifles on the ship, the acid blood could actually burn through the hull, as she's seen, so she would potentially not be wanting to blow it to bits in there because, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I always think that she's clinging on with her arm, isn't she? I think dislocated shoulder, broken arm. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
What would happen to you?
I don't think that would be very pleasant. We've got a question now. This is from Carl, a question for the chat and for everyone. Who's everyone's favourite character in this film besides Ripley? Again, I'm going to answer myself now. I don't have a favourite character because it's an ensemble piece, because if you took away one of the other characters, if you took away a character, there's no character you can remove really from the main cast of the film that doesn't make the other performances better.
No, absolutely. Giles is perfectly done. It's... you can't recast it, and all the characters sort of work in harmony. Hudson and Hicks. Yeah, you don't want to favourite out Hudson and Hicks. They have a kind of balance to them.
Well, look at this. People say I don't like Burke. I don't like Burke. But if you remove Burke,
I'm not meant to like Burke. Yeah,
exactly. But that's why he did such a great role in the film, because he was.
And he was also he wasn't ridiculous.
No,
he wasn't over the top. He's a villain, and he's a slimeball and a coward. But at the same time, you kind of get, who he is, and you understand who he is, and you understand his presence in the film. So, I think Paul Rice is actually terrific in that. He's got a lot of hard work to do in that film, and he does it really well.
Exactly. If he did the part badly, we wouldn't hate him so much.
Yeah, exactly. It works. So
he doesn't come across as comedic or anything like that, but.
And he's the theme. He's this sort of anti-capitalist idea. He carries this kind of anti-company through line from Alien into Aliens that they want to bring them back. They want to bring them home. That's their motivation.
It's you can certainly even, as we're coming towards the end of the film, we've discussed this as the credits roll about some of the films this is definitely influenced, and one film this is definitely influenced for me. Further down the line, and we discussed him earlier, was District 9. Huge influence in District 9, because of a core part of that film is the corporation wanting to weaponize the alien technology.
Yeah, it's interesting. Coming back to the director's cut or not director's cut. With the director's cut, that they've sent them out, that the company have sent them out to look at the derelict. So Ripley's almost caused the problem herself by telling them about everything, all the information, not Ripley particularly, but all the information that comes back from the Nostromo that sends them out, which kind of works, I suppose. It's a nice shapely idea. But I like the fact that I like not knowing the fact that it just sort of happened quite randomly.
Yeah.
But then there's this kind of suggestion, isn't there, that hangs over both Alien and Aliens, that the company knew all along about these creatures, and they sent them to the planetoid to begin with. Yeah. And how did they know? It's something the prequel should have, I suppose, established.
Well, it's kind of hinted at. Some of the stuff in Prometheus is a bit hinted at, where they've gone through the cave drawings and things, and it all gets a bit silly and confused. But no, I agree with you. But I do like the concept that you would have an evil corporation that would be seeking to weaponize and therefore monetize, because as we know, in this terrible world we live in, the things that get monetized for silly money are medical and weapons of war. A missile costs $10 million or whatever, so if they could turn an alien into a weapon that they could drop on a country or whatever and sell it to the highest bidder, they would.
I suppose that's in a way what William Gibson was trying to get at with his screenplay, was that if they needed to weaponize these creatures, what are they fighting? What battle is potentially happening? You've still got the Cold War going on. Then the idea of using the aliens makes more sense, or has a more greater motivation. So I kind of understood that with the William Gibson version, but I prefer it to be elusive. The company are just evil corporate.
They're a big. They are a bit pantomime, aren't they? They're a bit in the background, manipulating things from afar, and maybe there was some kind of a bigger plan eventually to make them into a bit more. We see them in Alien 3 a bit more as the terrible company that they.
Still coming to pick her up. With the Hendrickson cameo in that. And
it's but I've got to say, Ian, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful. If anyone's got any final questions for Ian, please get them in. It's been wonderful. So what have you got on the burner at the moment? What can we expect from you?
Well, I say I got a Cameron book coming out next year, which is finished, but books have this kind of very slow life cycle in which you finish them and they go off to be printed. And I'm doing I've done a series of sort of monographs on directors. I did a Quentin Tarantino one, sort of based on the Alien Vault, and a similar thing on directors. And I'm doing Christopher Nolan at the moment for that series, which is very difficult because Christopher Nolan's films are very complicated, and you can fall down a black hole of analysis trying to figure them out. And I'm trying to restrain myself from going, well, what does the Prestige mean? What is all happening? So you really have to kind of fight your compulsion to decipher them, because that just fill up the whole book within 2 minutes. But so those are the two things. I mean, there's some sort of plans loosely hovering around for next year, but they haven't come to fruition yet. So keeping busy.
That's wonderful.
So
well, that's great. Well, it's been an absolute joy having you with us. So I'm going to draw the watch party to a close now, because I don't think anyone's got anything else to say, except just I've got everyone saying thank you for joining us. How amazing
absolutely
you've been.
A great pleasure. And it's great to share this one, because I know there's a kind of group feel around Aliens. And I joke that it's a Christmas movie, and of course it's not. But the way everyone kind of loves it and goes back to it and embraces it and knows all the beats to it, give it a kind of Christmas movie feel. It's one of those your favorite things you always do. I don't know how many times you watch it a year, everyone, but I probably watch it once or twice a year because I just have to. And if it's on TV, I will always carry on watching it because you're just hooked straight away. And that's why I say it's a bit like a Christmas film, because it just has that compulsion about it.
It's fantastic. It's a great film. It's endlessly watchable. It's one of those ones, every time you see something new, it's just got so much depth. We've got everyone in the chat just saying thanks so much. But like I said, we're drawing the watch party to a close for today. Just to say, I will be back next week. So next week, we are having 2 watch parties. On Saturday night, we will be watching Gremlins, and that is our official Christmas party.
Absolutely.
Party.
Genuinely a Christmas film.
That really is. And then on the Sunday, we will be watching another horror film to be announced, and there's going to be some extra bits and pieces. So a double load of fun for our In Search of Darkness community, and we can't wait to have you all there for that. So everybody stay safe, be safe, and I will see you in 7 days. So thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.